Okay, so we are going live. Let's just wait for this to boot up a bit, and then we will quickly run through the bio. Okay. All right. Let's see if I can. Okay, so we are going live. Oh, let's wait till somebody shows up in the chat, and then I'm gonna let people know on Zuckerberg chat here. Hold on a second, folks. I'm trying to. All right. This is what happens when I do this. I'm a one-man band here. Okay. I think we got this rolling here. Okay. Oh, great. Wow. Excellent. Thanks. Wow. We have a lot of people show up on here. Hello, everybody. Thank you for that. Was a little bit awkward beginning here, but hey, it's all good. And yeah, so welcome to Super Soldier Talk. I'm James Rink, and we got an exciting show today. We got Daryl back with us, and this is part 2 of our ongoing series. And we might do a part three. I don't know. We'll see how this goes, because I've got 8 pages of notes from some regression work we did with Daryl. But and give a shout out to Oksana for helping on that. But so yeah, today we're going. Well, I guess I'll just do a little bit of bio here. So just to kind of run through. If you missed part 1, you should probably go back and watch it. But since you're already here, we'll go ahead and give you a little brief rundown here. So Daryl was recruited into the secret space program where he worked with Kruger, Solar Warden, the Joint. I don't know if were you in JDCF? The Joint Defense Command Force, Daryl? I think it was more of an ICC group.
Yeah, it was
It was?
No, well, no, I was just working. It was a Solar Warden ship, but it was like a joint task force with, I guess.
Yeah, that's it. The Joint Task Force. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I apologize, but we'll try to get this right. And Dark Fleet, as well as for the Tajitans. I'm trying to, I apologize to our Palladian friends if I said that name wrong. But in part 1, Daryl shared about how he was recruited into the SSP. His military career began in January 1999 when he joined the Navy to serve in the Naval Mobile Construction Battalion 7, where he served in the Middle East, as well as 2 years of service at the JMF Joint Maritime Force Royal Air Force Base at the St. Molwagon base in the UK. During this time, he has escorted executives into the underground portion of the base where he encountered gray extraterrestrials and exotic technology which could scan his biosigns. He also biosigns which detected that his IQ was off the charts. Basically, he was the second smartest guy at the base, essentially. He also encountered this individual, Michael Aquino, has a horrible reputation in this field of research, but yeah, it is what it is. And he also encountered little people in cages, and that's code word. If go use your imagination what that means, and had an argument with a reptilian that resulted in a forced slavery punishment in the mines of the moon, and then also service on Mars, where he was forced to swap bugs, which are spiders, basically, essentially. Maybe some of the cricket creatures, but he talked about that last time anyway. Okay, so not all of his experiences were bad. For 5 days, as a result of his service, he was granted German citizenship on their homeworld planet. And by the way, some people were asking what was the name of the German homeworld planet. Daryl says he doesn't remember. So we'll have to try to find the name of that in a future show. But so he was given a German wife. Well, actually, you met this lady, and then did you actually marry her?
No, but like I said before, I had a chance. I went to that space station and met up with the Taigetans, and they picked me up.
Okay.
And I was with them, and then I was officially in Solar Warden, pretty much.
And okay.
Basically, what I was supposed to do in the first place is where I went. I was supposed to go to Solar Warden in the first place, but for punishment, they sent me to the mines, and I wound up working with the Germans.
Okay, we're going to go into that just a bit. Let me just get a little bit more here. At the end of his service, he was debriefed, and this is what I think the audience members really want to hear about what you were when you were debriefed. You were given information through Looking Glass technology about some of the things that would happen in the future, including civil unrest, fires like the Paradise, California fires, and also the fires in Australia. Something about koala bears possibly becoming not extinct but endangered.
Endangered, yeah.
Um, Also, Clinton being exposed and her basically being HUNG. Okay. And the release of medical technology, a disbursement of septillion dollars of Vatican gold, which is basically going to be given to the entire world, and him appearing on a show called Super Soldier Talk. So what year was this when you were debriefed of all this?
2005.
Okay. Yeah, Super Soldier Talk didn't exist till 2010, so that's curious. All right, great. Well, all right. So let's by the way, audience members, if you have any questions, just throw them out there as long as you know they're appropriate, and I'll see if we can squeeze them in here. In the meantime, how about let's start with my first question is so what can you tell us what happened next after you met this lady on the German homeworld? They called you away. I guess you already said they either took you to Darkfleet or Solar Warden. Why don't you just go ahead and begin and get with the timeline?
Like I said, we went to some sort of like a space station, and it was like I don't know, it was like a UN kind of thing. It was where warring factions could go and they could speak peace treaties. It was also a big place for trade and stuff like that. And it was the whole discussion where they were having of it was like they were talking about cargo. It was like they were talking about me, but they didn't want me to know they were talking about me. It was the master, the head reptile, and he was talking to it to get in female. And she just kind of said, what rightfully belongs to us. You need to give it back. And he said, since we spent so much time and money into the cargo, then it rightfully belongs to us. And then the male stepped forward and he showed him a smart glass pad with like some sort of, I don't know, peace treaty. And he said you were in violations of Articles 27 and 30 of the peace treaty if you don't hand over the cargo forthwith. It'll be considered an act of war. And then the reptile read every page of it. It took him like 30 seconds. He just threw his hands up in the air and then he just walked away. And then the woman came up to me and she said, "You're coming with us now." And I went with them. And I remember I went on their ship and it looked like a stereotypical like polished stainless steel, polished metal kind of saucer. And I remember they said the man said sit here, and he showed me to the back, and like a door closed, and it was separate from like a cockpit. There was like a separate room in the back, and it was like a bench seat that went all the way around, and it looked like poured wax. There was no seams or rivets or anything, no screws or nothing. It was just like poured metal, like they just poured molten metal into a mold. And I sat down, and then they both, after about an hour or so, they both came back to the back, and they sat down like kind of away from me. And the woman said, "He looks disturbed." And the man said to her, "Wouldn't you be if you had to live with them?" And I looked at him whenever he said that, and they both looked at me. And there's this weird thing that they do where they'll look at you at the same time with really wide eyes. Like they looked at me at the same time, and they both like cocked their heads towards each other at the same time and looked at me. And I looked away really quick. It kind of freaked me out. And the man came in towards me, and he kneeled down in front of me, and he said, "Can you hear what I'm saying to you? Telepathically." And I said to him, "Yes," but it's this thing. I don't know. Whenever they're first establishing communication with you, they want you to like make a physical gesture. So I eventually nodded my head, and then he went in front of her again. And if you focus in more on a person, you can actually like have a private conversation. Basically, when you're speaking telepathically, there's different ways of doing it. And so I kind of like want to start off again about how confusing this was with me as well. Um,
Well, Daryl. So this is what? Are we on a Solar Warden craft, or is this the Jejitans at this
this is
point?
a Tagetin craft, as
The
far as I
Dead.
know.
Okay.
It looked just like a, I don't know, just a stereotypical polished metal flying
From
saucer.
the Billy Meyer case, that one
Exactly.
in
Yeah,
Switzerland.
it looked like a Billy Meyer ship. And
Did it look like the one with the wedding cakes with the
no, not
little
the wedding cake. The one with like the three
balls on the
windows on the top. The smaller one with like the three windows, just like a flying saucer with like three windows on the top.
and how actually let me ask you this. How big was it, and was it bigger on the inside than the outside?
I don't remember being bigger on the inside or outside, but it was like a three-man craft. It was only meant to have three people because I remember I told him I'm tired. Can I go to bed? Can I go to sleep? And he pushed like a rectangular kind of button on the wall, and on the far side, like a bed just kind of popped out, like out of the floor. And I lay down on that, and I woke up middle of the night, and I looked over, and I saw him like sleeping in the middle, and then she was on the other side. So it only had like enough room for like three beds. And it did have like three beds that would slide out of the floor. And so I'm getting out of the Navy, and I'm processing out, and it was really weird. I have to explain this part. I saw the Master Chief, and he was just like talking, and I really didn't care what he had to say. And then I went to see the executive officer next, and he stood up from his desk really slowly, and he looked sad. Like he looked at me like he was sad. And then all of a sudden, he was at the far side of his desk. It was like a long desk. And at first, I thought, did I have a stroke? It would seem like 3 seconds of my life just disappeared. It would have taken like about 3 seconds unless he ran there. And then all of a sudden, again, he just appeared like a foot in front of me. And I took a step back, and because he was higher density than me. And that's like why ETs can do strange things, like they appear, they can come out of nowhere and stuff, or walk through walls and stuff like that. It's just because, mainly because they're so fast. They're way faster than us. And he just appeared like in front of me. I took a step back, and he said, telepathically to me, he said, "Can you hear what I'm saying to you?" And I forgot like most of this stuff. I mean, I just didn't remember. I just talked myself out of it. It was a dream and all that, everything else. And he said, "Can you hear what I'm saying to you?" And I said, "Yes." I nodded my head eventually. And he just started going on about, I don't know. I remember the woman from the base that I met on the moon at first, and her name was April. I'm not going to give her last name, but she was on that base. But no, what I said was, I said I was with a woman. That's all I could remember really. I said, "Didn't I have children with her?" And he said no. He said that was April. And I said, April? I said, who's April? She had an Italian last name. And so I'll just call it Alphabet because it was a long last name. And he said Alphabet, like, duh. Because I only knew, in the military, mostly last names and everything. And I was like, oh, God, I can't stand her. Like, I just didn't like her at all. And I was like, that's her? And he's like, yeah, that was her. And I was like, ah. He's like, you didn't have any kids with her? And I was like, really? He goes, yeah. And he goes, and I said, I can remember the beginning and I can remember the end. And I said, I remember there was a very tall woman sitting in a chair with silver hair. And I said, I kissed her before I left. I remember hugging people and stuff like that. And he said, that was mother. He said, you had a son with her. I said, I had a son with her. He said, you have dozens of sons and hundreds of daughters. That's how he put it. And I looked at him, and I just got a computer that year, and I was watching like the Billy Meyer. I was just like, I just wanted to watch it for some reason. And I said, he said, they're called, I said, the people I was with, they're called the Pleiadians, right? And he said, we call them Nordics, because the military always has like a different name for the ETs and stuff like that. I said, they're called the Pleiadians. He said, we call them Nordics. I said, what do they call themselves? He said, Tagetans. And I said, who was she to me? The woman mother. He's like, well, you didn't love her as much as another one. And I said, well, what's the other one's name? And he said, Faru. And so I'm shuffling around, this $10,000 mahogany desk of the executive officer. I'm grabbing because I know for some reason I know this guy. He's like a father to me. I had no idea I knew him. And I grabbed a pen, and he's like, what are you doing? And I said, I'm looking for paper. And he gave me a Post-it note, and I'm just writing all these names down. I couldn't remember any of the names. And so, he said, you knew the king too. And I said, well, what's the king's name? And he said, Plachacha. So I wrote that down, and I wrote, and then he said the name of the ship I was on was the Nemitz. And he said, but since you were the pilot, you were allowed to give it a nickname. And he said, I called it Mama Bear because it was like a female ship. It had like a female soul, and it was like a female begetting soul. And that's the only time they really use artificial intelligence for ships that large. They everything else they have like a different kind of technology that's like kind of like a vegan version, I guess, of AI compared to the reptiles. They put souls on everything, like your weapon and your armor and everything. And yeah, so I'm just writing all this stuff down, and I don't know. I guess I'll go back to where I was before, and that's kind of like how I remembered all this stuff. And so then I'm in Solar Warden, and I'm on their ship, and I remember I'm eating, and the food was great because I was eating dark fleet food for so long, and it was so good. And if you ever want to have a conversation with one of them, you just ask them about their food, especially like one of the women. And she
Do
was
you
talking
remember?
about how,
Do you remember
huh?
the Tang from the Replicators?
Oh no, no. Like as far as I was with them. I wasn't really with people from Earth very much after this. I was mostly living with them, and
Hmm.
they ate like only water. I remember. I remember the woman of the room. They have like a really big vase, like that, with a big handle on the side. And if you're done drinking, you just slide your glass forward, and she'll get up and pour more water in your glass. It's like a 2 gallon like vase, and that's just like their tradition or something like that. And I just drank water, maybe with some sort of a citrus kind of flavor. I remember it had in it, but that was about it. And yeah, she was talking about how they have their own hydroponic farm on the ship. A third of the ship is nothing but hydroponics. And she goes, "You'll get to work on the farm." And I said, "Is that what I'm going to be, a farmer?" And the man said, "No." He said, "You're going to be a pilot. Farming is just part of your service. You do something called service, where everybody, including the captain, works on the farm like once a week. And I don't know, it's just they call it part of your service. Everybody has to like make their own food, or pitch in to grow their own food." And so the first day, I did just nothing but communicating with him. They call it communicating, like they don't call it telepathy. They just call it communicating. And I communicated with him the first day, and then the second day I went through some sort of test where it was like spatial recognition. It was different kinds of shapes. I had to turn the shapes inside out, flatten them out in my head. It was just like all these shapes, like kind of in my head. It was being read to me like telepathically, and I had to take them apart, put them back together. And then the third day, I was flying the ship, and it was like that quick. It was really fast. And he was the navigator, I was the pilot, and she was like the science officer, kind of in the back. So, she checked like anomalies in space and things like that. And so we all lived in the same room, because the more often when you live with somebody, your telepathic like bond becomes stronger. So if you're living in the same room with people, it becomes stronger. And I think it was like the fourth or fifth day. I remember we were eating, and I don't know how it came up, but it was the Dark Fleet. And she said we knew. She said we weren't expecting to go into the mines. I don't think they were expecting me to, poke the reptile in the eye. That was like an anomaly. I don't know, like fifth density beings, they can kind of read and manipulate third density. They can kind of pick it up. They can kind of manipulate it. They can kind of figure out what's going on. And she said we weren't expecting that. That was like an anomaly that we weren't expecting to go into the mines. But she said we knew you were going to go into the Dark Fleet. And I said, well, why did you have me go into the Dark Fleet? And she said, we wanted you to learn from them. And it made me really angry. Just the way she said it, so I don't know, nonchalantly, like she didn't care. And she just said, mm-hmm. She was like eating her food. She's like, yeah, we knew you were there. And I said, you knew I was there, and you didn't do anything to help me? And she said, no. And I just got up off the table, and I sat down, and I picked up my guitar, and I started playing it, because that's just what I always did. I always just played my guitar when I got angry or anything. And I started playing, and when I looked up, they were just both sitting there and staring at me with really big eyes. Like ETs are fascinated by our music. And I remember he said, how did you do that? And I started yelling at them out loud. I said, I said, that wasn't for me. I mean, that wasn't for you. That was for me. I said, I don't want to live with any of you anymore. I don't want to talk to you anymore. And he said, well, it's going to be a little bit hard to do your job if you don't talk to us. And I said, well, I'll do my job. I'll be professional, but I don't want to live with any of you anymore. And I was yelling at him. And he stood up and he started yelling at me. And he said, I could overpower you if I wanted to. You know that, don't you, Daryl? And I just said, fuck you. And I threw my guitar in the bed and I like walked out of the room. And I was just so mad. I didn't talk to any of them for like 3 days. And then eventually, but she would talk to me every day, like eating. She would like try to get me to talk. And eventually, like the third day, I started to talk. And, you know, he said, well, I thought you were going to talk to us anymore, or something like that. And I apologized for yelling, but I was really angry for like 3 days. And I don't know. I was just living with them, and they weren't like, I don't know how to put this. They weren't
Well,
they weren't nudists, but they went to the shower. They just walked to the shower naked, and they just like went to bed naked. They slept naked, and it was just like that was just how it was.
what about their uniform? Was it really skin tight? Like you could pretty much see everything?
Yeah, yeah. It was just like a skin tight, like your blue uniform. It had like the low collar, like that kind of thing and stuff like that. And but yeah, I mean, you could see anything anyways. But yeah, like I would have to walk out of the room sometimes because she would just be like, she'd go to take a shower, and I'd be like, oh, and then you can't keep secrets from like telepaths, you know what I mean? So it was just like embarrassing. And I think it was like 4 weeks, and I just kept on telling her that I liked her and everything else. And it wasn't until I actually said to her again that I'm sorry for yelling at you before, shouldn't have done that, and everything else, that she eventually just said, all right, okay. And yeah, and it happened. And I remember Robert said that less than 2% of the people of Earth are genetically compatible enough with them to have children with them. And he said that, but the main reason that they liked me, it wasn't because of the guitar or anything else. It was because I could talk to the children, he said. And I said, what do you mean? He said, the kids have a type of pig Latin that the adults don't understand. It's not until they're about 6 years old that they outgrow it, then they really can't understand it either. And I wanted him to explain it. And he said, I don't know, it's like baby talk with a few words here and there. And I said, explain it. I had him do it. And I don't know, I guess I'll try to do it. It was kind of weird. It's like, I don't know, it's like, I don't know, it's like buck, 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 buck. And then we went to the and then over to the buck, buck, buck. It's just like few words here and there, but it's like mostly emotion. It's not like words. And I could pick up what they were saying, and the adults were really fascinated by that because none of them can do that. And but then the adults, they can talk to each other too without the kids hearing. I don't know. It's almost like you deepen the frequency or something like that, and it's like the kids can't pick it up. So if you want to
But
have a conversation with my
but
kids,
but Daryl, if they were very telepathic, then surely they would be able to understand this pig Latin, right? Or is it?
I don't know. It was just something they couldn't do. It was just something that all kids could do. All kids could just speak this type of, yeah. It was mostly emotion. It was just like, and it was not very many words. It seems like a lot of it, when they speaking telepathically, it's about 50% emotion, about 50% words. You kind of, they can just say something like car, and then sometimes you can just say one word, and it would take a long time for someone to unpack it. Because what they were actually saying is like an 81 red Toyota Corolla with a dent on the right fender and 300,000 miles. They could just convey all this information just by saying like one word and projecting this one word into your mind. And I don't know, it was different than any kind of like regular telepathy. It was more complex. But yeah, I don't know. The kids could just speak a type of language that the adults couldn't pick up. And like I said, once they got to be around 6 years old, the kids couldn't do it anymore. And so yeah, she got pregnant, and then she had a kid. And then before she had the kid, she told me that I'm going to change. And there's something with the Tibetans where they always say that you need the experience. They don't really like to explain stuff. They don't think it means anything. They say you need the experience. And so she just told me that she was going to change. So I just thought she was just going to become, I don't know. I didn't know what to expect. But she had the kid, and she just like became transfixed with the kid. She was just the kid. That was just it. That was all. That was it. She ate with the kid. She bathed with the kid. She slept with the kid. The kid wanted for nothing. The kid even wore, she wore like a sling around her shoulder and around her waist that was made of the same material as her uniform. And it was very breathable. So it looked like the baby was in a cocoon. And as soon as the baby made a noise, she'd like pulled it open and just held it in front of her and just like gazed into its eyes, like trying to communicate with it. And like that was it, man. I couldn't figure out what was wrong with her. I thought she was like going through like depression or something like that. And I didn't know what was happening. And it finally was like 4 months went by. And I said, I want to hold my son. It was a boy. And I said, I want to hold him. And she said, she didn't say anything. She just held the kid. And I was like, let me hold my son. Let me hold my son. And I was kind of, I don't know, I was freaking out. I didn't know what was wrong with her. I didn't want to tell anybody because I didn't want her to get kicked off the ship. I still kind of had that dark fleet mentality where I didn't know what they were going to do. Maybe if she was like mentally unsound. And I tried to like, hold the kid from the back and hold his back. And she just punched me in the face and knocked me to the ground. And they're really strong. The women are strong and the men are way stronger than us. And I got up and I went to like take a step forward to her to like say, what do you think you're doing, hitting me in the face like that? And she just started screaming at the top of her lungs and had this look on her face like she was just gonna kill me or something. So I just walked out of the room and I walked around the ship and I came back home and like an hour early and I went to bed. And then I was with and they don't go to work or nothing. So she was off work while they had the baby. And
Well, when you say you went home, you mean back to planet Earth?
I went back to the room, yeah, and I slept in the bed with her, but she was just always on the other side of the bed, and she just never looked at me. And it's always, she had the kid. She would just like kind of be in fetal position with her back turned to me, with the kid in her arms. And that was it.
Okay, wait, but hold on, Daryl. So during this time, you were going back and forth between planet Earth and the ship?
No, we were just staying on the ship. We were around Earth though. We were in the Earth solar system. You could see Earth all the time. But
did they let you go back to planet Earth during this time at all?
Yeah, but I mean, right now we were just on the ship. That was it. We stayed on the ship for like years sometimes. These ships were huge.
And can you talk a little bit about the Palm Far? That's the Vulcan sexual when they go into heat. Is that the same kind of thing?
Oh, you want me to talk about that? Yeah. Well, I'll talk about that once I get done with her. Yeah, the Palm Far. Yeah, that happens with too. I don't know what it was called. Yeah, the men rut. They rut. They rut like butts. And like, yeah. And so I was talking to him, the co-pilot, the navigator, and they have like a type of training where they have like a type of wrestling, with grappling. And I was like, do you want to train? They used to train with him sometimes after work. And I was like really mad. He said, sure. And then we started training, and I was just kind of like being an ass and like hitting him and stuff like that because I was so mad. I didn't know what was wrong, and I was just trying to take it out on him. And he was way stronger than me, so he just kept on throwing me to the ground harder and harder. And eventually he threw me on the ground really hard, and my one ring nail that was long, one of my picking nails, got caught on something, and it tore it right through the the skin. I stood up and I had my back towards him, and I said, oh, God damn it, and shit. And I was yelling at the top of my lungs, and he said, what's wrong? And I said, when you threw me down, I hurt my nail. And then he grabbed me by my shoulder and he like spun me around. He looked into my eyes and he said, what's wrong? And they can kind of do this thing where it's like, they can make you kind of like tell them like what's happening to you. And I said, I don't know, it's something wrong with Faru. She ever since she's had a baby, she doesn't talk to me, and there's something wrong with her. And I think she's losing her mind. I don't know what's happening. And he said, you need to talk to Elder. And Elder is like he's like the judge kind of thing. If there's like a dispute or anything like that, he kind of settles it. So the first time I met him, and he was married to Mother. Mother was his queen, as they call it. And so I went there, and I walked over there. I saw him. And he was big. He was like 14 and a half feet tall, and he had a white beard and like comb back hair. They get taller once they hit around 2,000 years. They live around 3,000 years. When they hit around 2,000 years, their bones begin to grow very slowly, and they get very tall. He was about 14 and a half feet tall. And I told him what was happening, and he goes, you didn't hurt the baby, did you? I said, I tried to hold the baby. You didn't hurt it, did you? And I said, no, I didn't hurt him. And he said that the women go through like a 10-month long bonding period when their babies are born, and like you can't get near them, like you can't, you have to stay away from them, like period. And then he said another woman was available. She just arrived onto the ship. He's like, you could stay with her. And I said, I was just kind of like, well, I didn't want to do it. I was like, no, I'm like, I'm with her, and I don't want to do this. He's like, that's just the way it is, and he just kind of said it like that. And I said, okay. And then I wound up being with her while she went through this bonding period. And yeah, and the men about every 6 months for 2 weeks, they basically rut. Where it won't kill them or anything like that, but they'll get like aggressive, and they get almost like kind of like Tourette's. They'll just get like violent. They'll say violent things, and usually just a woman just stays with them. They get 2 weeks off work like every 6 months, and they just stay with a woman, and that's usually how they meet women. Is just like a woman just like volunteers herself to them, because the ratio is like 30-1 of like women to men. So it's just what do you, it's not, isn't it, is it, it's polygamous, I think it is, but it's not in the sense that it's a social thing. It's like they're biologically created to be like polygamous. It's just like the way it is, because the men rut and the women go through this 10-month long bonding period. So it's like they have to do that. And then after you get like more than one wife, they actually will like work it out. So like, well, you could be with her while I'm bonding with the baby, and they'll work it out like how it's going to work out. And yeah, so that happens. So then I have two. And then once you get like more than one wife, the men will come up to you and they'll say, who's your queen? And it's like basically like, who's like your main wife? Like, who do you trust the most? Who should we relay messages to for you? And so you always like pick like a queen, like your main wife, kind of. And that's just the way it is. And there's really not like a lot of jealousy or anything like that. It's just the way it is. And yeah. And once and then I started, they have like a family night, a family day, like once a week, about where all the kids come and the adults watch the kids play. And it was after she went through her I forgot about mother. After Svaru went through her excuse me, her bonding process, mother, I was kind of mad. I was kind of like, well, I'm just with this other woman, and she punched me in the face, and I don't know. I was just like, I don't want to be with her no more. I didn't know they did that. I was kind of mad. So mother called me in, and she's like an elder female, and she's kind of like the headmaster of the school. Like in school, they teach the kids their past lives, and that's kind of like how they're educated. And she's like deals with family disputes too and things like that. And so I went to her room, and she said, Svaru is done bonding with her baby. She's ready to see you now. And I was like, well, I don't really want to see her. I don't want to. I was just kind of had that attitude. I was kind of bullheaded about it. And she did this thing where she like leaned forward. She was sitting down. She had her legs crossed, and she leaned forward and she put her hands on her knee, and she just like leaned forward to me and looked at me and kind of smiled. And it felt like, I don't know, like a gust of warm air kind of hit me. And I don't know how to explain it. It was like, I don't know. I guess a good way of putting it is, it kind of like gave me like childhood memories, childhood feelings of like my mother picking me up and me burying my face in her hair, or me being too little to like look over the kitchen counter. So my grandmother picked me up and sit me down on the kitchen counter so I could watch her make bread. Something like that. It was just like an unconditional kind of love feeling. And it just snapped me right out of it. And it was like the first time something like that really worked, where I was just like, I did not want to see her again. And it snapped me right out of it. And I said, you're right. I said, I'll see her. And it just changed my mind. I don't know. It was just the way the emotion was. And I saw her, and I kissed her, and I held the baby for the first time. And then it was just like, then we started to go to like a family day once a week. And I got to meet Leader, and Leader was two people. Leader was him and his queen, his main wife, and he was a warrior caste. And I got to meet the others. So that was like the ranking system. It was like elder, mother, leader, and leader were like a couple, a male and a female couple. And I remember he had like a hologram on his chest of his uniform, and she did too. and it was like I forget what you call that, almost like a Star of David, where an up a right side up pyramid intertwined with like an upside down pyramid, but it was like a hologram. And I said, "Is that your?" I said, "He said, what are you looking at?" I said, "I'm looking at your rank." He said, "That's not my rank. That's I think he called it his sigil." And the first day I felt kind of out of place. It was weird. I don't know. It was strange. They're a lot smarter than me, and just the way they their mannerisms and stuff are different than ours. The regular men and women, they really don't have a sense of humor that much. With the warrior cast, you can actually get them cracking up, and they're very witty. They're more like human. And first day, I really didn't do much. And then as Faru said, mother's coming over for family day today. You should play your guitar. So I brought my guitar and I played it for him. And just like always, their eyes were like, and their mouths were open. They're all open, and leader said, "How did you do that?" Like none of them like understood like how I did it, and I just started laughing at them. They said, "What?" He said, "What's so funny?" And I did like the face that they did, and they all looked at each other, kind of insecure, and stopped doing it. And I just, I told them that, I played simple version of Ode to Joy, and I said, you start like this, and then I played the version of Ode to Joy where it's the melody and the harmony together, and then I said, then you work your way to stuff like this. And
So they don't do a lot of musical instruments out there.
no, they don't have like a melody and harmony kind of bass music like we do. You know what I mean? They have almost like an Enya kind of thing. I don't know. It's almost like they take the natural sounds from their home world and they kind of mix them together. It's like birds and stuff like that. I don't know. It's strange. It's animals of their home world, and they kind of mix that all together to sound. But as far as music, they really don't have music like we do. And yeah, so that happened, and then I remember one time we were on the ship, and nothing went off, but we were under attack. I was linked with the ship. I was telepathically linked with the ship, and I don't know what was happening. And I got her up, and then we went to leader's room. We told them, and then they said, and leader's son was older by now. I think leader's son was really crazy. Like he was a warrior caste boy. The warrior caste, they only have boys. They only produce Y chromosome, so they only have boys, and they're all warrior caste. And by the time he was 2, he could do like parkour stuff. He could like run straight at a wall and take 2 steps up it and do a backflip. Like the kids were really coordinated. Even the ones that weren't warrior caste were really coordinated at a young age. And by this time, he was starting to squire. They squire for their fathers. Like where they'll do everything for their dads. They'll maintain their equipment and all that stuff. They'll do everything, and in exchange, their fathers teach them everything they know, type of thing. They go like through a squiring period, and once they turn 11, once they hit puberty, they get their tech put in them for the first time, and the women become adults in about 5 or 6 months. They go to about 20 years old, and they stay there in about 5 or 6 months, and the men. It takes them about, I don't know, 10, 11 months, and they become about 27. So it's almost like the same peaks as ours, like the peak for a woman is about 20 and the peak for a man is about 27. So it's like that. And so he was probably about 14 or 15 at this time. I'm kind of speeding through this. Like I said, it was a big period of my life, but I want to try to get through the smaller details.
But do they age at the same rate as a human, typical Earth human?
When they're children, they grow up just like a kid from Earth. Yeah.
The same rate. So like okay, and then but what about when they become adults? When
they become adults, they really slow down. They really slow down. Like I said, about 3,000 years they live. And that was the XO who told me that. And he told me that go ahead.
All right. Well, okay. I'll ask this question and you continue. But what point do they start? Because you said they live about 3,000 years, but there's a point where they start to grow again, get taller, and they get to be like
about
14 foot tall.
Years.
So from 2,000 to 3,000, they slowly decline.
Their bones slowly grow, and they get like almost like a plastic surgery look about them. Like when somebody's on the verge of having too much plastic surgery, their bones get really high because their bones grow, but it's like their skin doesn't. So their skin gets kind of tight looking, and they're not like bad looking. They're still attractive people, but it's just like they'll get really high cheekbones, and their jaws, their jaws will get broader and stuff like that. It's like their bones keep growing, but their skin doesn't. And anyways, yeah. So I'm trying to talk about, leader's son and everything, and we were under attack, but the alarms weren't going off. It made no sense. Somehow somebody got into the ship, and so we told leader, and they said, get the adults, warn the children. He warned the adults. I got to all the kids. We were getting to there's like escape shuttles. And we're running to the escape shuttles, and whenever you're being attacked, they can saw through the hulls of the ship and actually board the ship with smaller craft if they can get your shields down. But they got to get your shields down first, and somehow they got our shields down, and they were boring into our ship, into our hulls, to get into the ship. And we got to the escape craft, and by this time I had two kids and a boy and a girl, and they looked at me and they said, Dad, Dad. They started yelling out loud. They said, Dad, what about Mother? What about Mother? And I looked at their faces, and I could tell that it wasn't like their faces, it was her face. Like, she looked scared. It was weird. It was like the way their faces were the same exact face. And like I said, whenever you spend more time with people, she spent the most time with the kids, so she had a strong bond with them. And it was almost like I could kind of tell there she was just kind of projecting what she was going through on them. So I looked at her and I said, like, I have to go. And I looked at the navigator and I said, don't leave me. And I ran down the ship. I ran down to her room, down the halls of the ship to her room. And the whole time I can hear the ship communicating with me. It was saying things like breach hull 3, sections 55 and 56. And that was like right by their room. And so I got to the room, I opened the door, and I came in. They're both just sitting there. And I went up to her and I said, can you run? And she said, no. And then Elder said out loud, take her. So I grabbed her and I fireman carried her. I threw her over my shoulder. And I remember she was like remarkably light for a 7-foot tall woman. She was like 90 pounds probably. And he got up, and it was the first time I ever saw him get up. He was huge. And he had to like kind of squat down and shuffle through the door. He almost squatted down to his bottom and like shuffled through the door to get through the doorway. And he was just like buying time for us. And he ran after the ones that were coming onto the ship. And I slammed up against the doorway and I looked through it to see what it was. And it was a mantis and 2 cyborgs. And mantises are usually like mercs and pirates. And they were like mercs. I could tell they were mercenaries because there's so many bugs, just like in real life, different species in the universe. And so he ran after him. He let out like a really deep yell and ran at him. And I ran the opposite direction with her. And I heard her cry out, and I knew he was gone. And I made a left, and her legs were like so long, I think they kind of caught up into my legs and made me trip me up a little bit. I kind of tripped a little bit, but I caught myself. And I was running, and I remember seeing the navigator. He was like waving, like, come on, come on. He was like doing that. And I tossed her to him, and he grabbed her and immediately put her down into a seat. I saw a flash, and I heard the doors close. And I felt someone like tapping my shin, and I thought it was one of my kids. When I looked down, it was my arm, and it was, my arm was kind of like that. My hand, it was like grazing back and forth on my leg and like tapping my leg. And I looked up at my right shoulder to see where my arm should have been, and it was just like burnt bone. It looked like cooked pork chops and cooked pork chop bone. And my whole shoulder was gone, and my whole like right chest was gone. I remember I looked in and I could see like the bottom of my right lung, and I like looked across and I saw like my rib cage was like all burnt, and I could kind of see it, and I saw like glistening. And when I realized it was my heart moving inside my chest, like I fell down to my knees, and then before like I even hit the ground, I was out. And I woke up and I was in darkness. I didn't know where I was, and I went to use my right arm and it wasn't there, and I went to use my left and I felt like a smooth surface, like a round surface. And I went to look up and I immediately felt like horrible pain tingling down to like my toes, and I felt to see what was happening in the back of my neck, and there was a cable in the back of my neck. And it's like they put a cable in your neck when you're like clinically dead to keep like your soul, your spirit, your consciousness like in your body while it's being fixed when you have like no heart rate or anything, no heartbeat or anything. It keeps like, the electric impulses going in your brain. And I remember the co-pilot, he said, sleep, sleep. And I went back to sleep. And then I woke up and I was in like a medical bed, and we were on like a separate ship, I believe. They didn't take our ship because, they're just basically pirates. They just wanted certain information or something. And I went out and I saw her. I saw Svaru and the two kids, and the mother was there, and she was like kind of crying, not really crying, but just sad. And I told the kids to go to her and help her out. And they said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Mother helped you when you were weak and she was strong. Now you need to help her because you're strong and she's weak." That's just basically what I said. And they just sat on her lap. I said, "Just sit on her lap and just be with her." And I went back in and I talked to the co-pilot, and I said, there has to be like an inside man. There's no way you could take a ship that big, like a starship, and knock down its shields and everything else. And he said, "You're probably right." And I was just wearing that, like a hospital gown kind of thing. And I said, "Can I have one of your uniforms?" And he thought about it for a second, and he said, "Yes." So I put it on, and because I always just wore like a Solar Warden uniform. I never wore like one of the uniforms. And I remember I closed like the front. I just slid it up, and it just became like one form of cloth. It just became one piece of cloth. And I remember even like the cushions in the feet. I could feel that, and even like arch supports. Like it kind of like lifted you up. At first, it felt like you were wearing footy pajamas, but then as soon as you closed that flap, it gave you like cushion for your heels and everything else. And walked back out, and I remember one of the guys. I think he was just like a commander like me. And he wasn't saying to be rude, but he said like, "You're dressed like them." He said, "Why are you dressed like them?" And I said vendetta. It was just like I was just going to keep this thing on until I figured out who did this. I was pissed. And yeah, then after that, I started growing my hair out like them. Nobody really bugged me because I was just with them. I just stayed with them. And we got back on the ship. It was repaired, and we were just trying to figure out who did it.
But they're about 7 foot tall. And how tall were you?
I mean, well, the warrior caster is 7 foot tall.
Yeah.
The regular men were only probably about 6'4", 6'5". The warrior caster about 7 feet, and the women are probably about, I don't know, 5'9", 5'10". But yeah, the warrior caster are like 7 feet, but the regular men aren't that tall. They're taller than me, but they're not that tall. And like I said, it kind of snugged up to you when you closed the front flap. It formed up. It was like baggy at first, but then it just like everything snugged together. And it was like you were walking around naked. It was like so comfortable and, I don't know, breathable. It was really nice. And anyways, turned out it was like the Germans that did it. They got into our ship. The ship has like a way of reading like biometric signs and all that other stuff. So it's really hard to get into it. Somehow they must have hacked into it. They got information and they got into it. And it turned out it was that first class petty officer that hated me so much. In the very beginning was one of them. The one who said I should have you executed for what you did to my man when I poked the reptile in the eye. First one I saw it was in the Gestapo uniform. And the Taigetans, they execute. You know what I mean? After they get information, they're not. I mean, they're peaceful, but they're not. They're not Gandhi. And so he was executed. And I remember I said to him, I tried talking to him, and I said, "Why do you hate me so much?" Because he was in like a cell. I said, "Why do you hate me so much just because I poked one of those things in the eye?" He said, "Don't talk to me like that." I tried talking to him telepathically. So then I started talking to him out loud. And I said, "When that blade's passing through your neck, just remember this. You're a Judas to your own species." And then I just walked out. And that's just kind of how I saw the Germans, just as traitors to their own species, it seemed like. I don't know. The off-world Germans, I don't know. That's just how I saw them. But I wanted to become one, so who am I to talk? But yeah, and then that happened, and then what else am I going through? I remember a leader called me up and he said, it was like an all like warrior cast kind of meeting, and he said, "What do you think we should do?" We had like a reptile problem and a dark fleet problem. They were like on the offense and attacking us. The Dark Fleet are pretty much mercs for the reptiles. So anything Dark Fleet does is because the reptiles told them to do it. And I said, what do you think we should do? And I said, or what do you think is what he said. And I said, I think that the reptiles, oh, I forgot something before. We were to go to a ship to speak with reptiles, to high-ranking reptiles of some sort. And it was me, Svaru, and the navigator. And we went up, and it was almost like a military thing where we were standing 3 abreast. And she, and the way they communicate, the way they negotiate, is a female, like I said, always comes up first and kind of is nice and complimentary, and how are you doing today, and it's things like that. And it was the second in command. He just hauled off and like hit her in the face, and she was pregnant again at the time. And I got really mad, and I hated the reptiles to begin with, and I got really mad. And I kept they have Tigetan steel is really good. They have like a type of metal that's like all other beings like are jealous of. And it was like a collapsible, almost like stiletto kind of knife, where the blade collapsed into the lower part of the blade, and then all the collapsed into the handle. And I kept one behind me because I didn't trust the reptiles. As soon as he did that, I pulled it out from behind me and I stabbed him right in the chest, right in the heart, and he dropped quick. I never stabbed one before, like up close and personal. I never killed one up close and personal before, just on ships and stuff. And he was like heaving. Oh, I stood over him and I like beat it on my chest with like the knife still in my hand, because all the others were like staring at me. They like stood up and they were like at their workstations and were looking at me. And I said, look at me. I yelled out loud. I said, I'm the one who did this to you. I was like hitting the knife on my chest. I said, I'm the one that did this to you. So if he ever tried to do that again, he'd see me, because I knew he would survive, because he was on the ship, with the med beds and everything else. And I knew he was going to survive, but he started to like retch or lurch, like he started to heave, like make when you're throwing up, he started making that like sound. And then at the last second, I thought, oh no. And I went to turn away, and he like spewed up this bile or acid or venom or something all up like the side of my face and burned out my left eye, like right away. And he grabbed me, the Tigetan, my left arm, and she grabbed my right arm, and they pulled me out into the hallway. And most ET tech is like universal. It's weird. It's like he just knew in the hall there was a rectangular button, and he pushed it, and a stretcher just slid right out of the wall. And it was like a hovering stretcher, and they laid me on it. They ran down to the medical bay, and they put me into a med bed, and I just passed out. When I got up, he was still there, and she was gone. I'm guessing she was negotiating, because pretty much negotiating for my life for what I did. And he said the master wants to see you, because the head reptile is always called the master on the ship. And so I went down there, and it was like a military inspection again. We were like 3 abreast, and the master was there, and then the guy stabbed was behind him, because he already got out of the med bed too. And they told me beforehand how the reptiles speak. They speak almost like a reptile way. It's like and he said my man too, just like the Germans first said, I should have you executed for what you did to my man. The master said, why did you stab my man? And I said, because he hit her. And he said, I don't care. And he said, I said, she's my mate. He said, I don't care. And I said, she carries my child. And he looked at me, and he just kind of looked at me, and he walked away. There's like a big thing with ETs is like their children, all ETs. It's like their children is a huge part of their deal. And
did the reptilian know that she was with your child?
No, I don't think so. And it was another thing was the rarity of it too, because he knew I was from Earth, and the rarity of it as well, I think, is what kind of got him.
So they weren't expecting you to produce children.
Yeah, with them. Yeah.
So Daryl, do you think you probably have you probably got their genetics?
Yeah. I mean,
some
the
distant
XO said that. Yeah,
ancestry.
even the XO said that less than 2% of people from Earth are genetically compatible enough with them to have kids.
Ah, I see. Okay.
Yeah, and then the guy I stabbed, he like walked forward, like it was like a military inspection. And I remember he said, "How's your face?" And I looked at him and I said, "How's your heart?" And his eyes got real small. You know, like I said, they don't really bare their teeth or anything. Their eyes just get real small. And the master called me over, and we kind of like went to an office, like his own personal room, and he was talking about how we've been at war for so long, and all we want is peace, and it was just all this stuff. And I agreed with him, and it was just nothing happened. You know, it was just I was protecting my child pretty much, and that's just how they took it. And all they really wanted to do is talk negotiations of peace. And then we came back, and I remember it was just all warrior cast. And the leader asked me, he said, "What do you think about what they said? What do you think?" And I said, "The only reason they want peace is because they're weak. Somehow they're weak, and they're just waiting for time until they can become strong again. Then they'll attack us with everything they have. They'll kill all of us, and they'll enslave all of our women and children, and that'll be the end of it. You know, that's all they want." And I said, "What we should do is we should just attack them right now with everything we got because they're weak. That's the only reason they'd want peace." And he said, "I think you're right." And then called us over, and then you know, he talked to the others for a while, and then he called me over personally, and he's like, "Do you think you could command, you know, some of your own men, you know, from Earth?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, I could do that." And when I was in Solar Warden, a different war was happening on the moon, and they freed the moon. And but you know, the people who were in the mines and stuff like that were still there and working. And so I recruited like probably about 50% of them. I remember I gave like a speech or something like, "I was once like you. Look at me now. Look where I am now. You know, I was once a slave like you, and look where I am now." But still, about half wanted to stay there. But I encouraged them to like stop doing the whole brothel thing and actually start families. Just, you know. And I remember the XO said that, you know, they liked you on the moon. You know, they liked you a lot because you
Daryl,
helped them.
Daryl, just pause for a second. So the brothel thing, for those of you who didn't listen to the first part, the people to motivate people to work as slaves on the moon, they allowed you to go to the brothels, and those children were being sent back to Earth to be put in cages to be harvested for something and found in blood that rhymes with a popular Google browser. So continue on. Or you,
Yeah, so I recruited these people, and I knew how to like break people in and from the Dark Fleet and everything else. Like I said, I became kind of like a chief or a sergeant, and I was breaking these guys in. I remember a leader called me over, and he said, "Do you talk to your children that way?" He said, and it made me really mad. I knew that's what he was trying to do. And I said, "No, you know I don't." And he's like, "Well, why do you talk to them that way?" And I sat down with him, and I said, "Do you fear death?" And he said, "No." And like the warrior cats don't fear death. I don't know how they do it, but they don't. The regular men do, and the women do, but the warrior cats do not fear death. And I said, "Well, they do, and the only way I can be sure that they do what they're doing, accomplish their mission, is if they fear me more than they fear death." Pretty much is what I told him. And I guess he kind of understood. And so we did that, and then we had an attack on the reptiles, and I believe we did it under like almost like a what do you know like I think the ships were just there, and we were kind of like the white flag of parlay or whatever you want to say, like because they would do junk like that all the time. They would just attack you out of the blue. They didn't care about any kind of rules or regulations or anything. So I just said we should just do the same thing, and we just attacked them when they weren't even expecting it. Their ships were just kind of floating next to ours, and we were just talking about peace treaties. And I sent them through like a crash course, like boot camp of about a month. And we did the same thing where there's smaller, it's almost like an amphibious attack where there's smaller ships that latch onto their ship and cut right through the hulls and then just knock down all the hulls, and then you just aboard their ship. And we were kind of like, the men from Earth were kind of like tanks, and they were kind of like the infantry or something. Like we were in the front, and we took all of the long range attacks. And ET armor, as far as I can remember it, it does a specific thing very well. Like it could take long range attacks. Like our armor did really good long range attacks, but their armor behind us, they could take, um, like piercing, kind of like up close and personal weapons, hand to hand weapons, and things like that. So their armor was more developed for a hand to hand weapon, and our armor was more developed for a long range. So we were in the front, and they kind of had their hands over our shoulders and were like ducking behind us while we were advancing. And like he kept on saying to me telepathically, advance, and I told him to advance, and we took a few steps forward, and we just kept on doing that, advance, advance. Wave after wave of reptile were coming after us, and they were just really athletic and just coming right at us. And every now and again, one would kind of like jump over top of us. One of the warrior cats, they had like curved swords, is what they had, and they would just take out a sword and just stab them and throw them down. And then he asked me a word that I would know to say whenever they wanted to jump in front of us and engage in hand to hand. And I said, fixed bayonets. And then once we got to a certain point, he said, fixed bayonets. And we dropped our weapons, and there's like kind of like, I don't know, it was kind of like a strap on your shoulder, but it had like a motor in it almost, that it slung your weapon behind your back just automatically. And then we had like these blades come out the sides just in case one of them got past them, so we could engage in hand to hand, but they did almost all of it. Oh, I forgot something before. I'm sorry. The women would, before you went into combat, they would braid your hair on your left side. Something like that.
Yeah. So this is the blade of the gods, the diamond tip spinning barbs. This right here spins around. This is used by the reptilians. It's a ceremonial. So is this what it looked like?
No, not. I'm talking about a knife. I'm talking. Well, the actual blades kind of came out of your arms almost. It was part of your suit. It was like blended in with your suit. And they had like separate swords that they just carried with them, and they had a different kind of armor. And their armor was almost like straight up like shiny. It looked almost like silver, because like they do have like cloaking technology, but they knew that they knew the reptiles knew that we were coming, so there was really no point in it. So they have almost like a kind of a showy kind of armor. And
Daryl, can I pause you for a second?
yeah,
Where is this battlefield actually taking place? Is this?
This was near Earth. This wasn't around our solar system. It wasn't like around. It wasn't on top of Earth, but this was near our solar system. I think somewhere around Mars.
On the surface?
Not on the surface, in space. We were engaging on like ship to ship, like combat. Like I said, it was almost like an amphib attack, where they would have smaller craft saw right through the hull of the ship, and then we would just invade their ship, just like what happened to us at first. And yeah, the women would braid your hair, and each wife you had would put a braid on the left side of your head, and they would hum when they did it. So you would have like these warrior cats that had like 30 wives. So like the entire left side of their head was just nothing but a braid, and then they would just tie it back and then put it under their helmet. And and then yeah, he said fixed bayonet. They pretty much jumped right over us. I remember he kind of like hopped on my shoulder. They were really strong and athletic, and he just jumped right over us. And his son was still in his like puberty phase, and he kind of held onto his back like a spider monkey almost as he jumped over. And every now and again he would like wound one of the reptiles, and he'd tell his son now, and he'd duck down, and his son would lean over, would reach over him and stab it right in the chest, right in the heart, and then go behind his father. He was only about 15, maybe 16 at the time. And that's because like a warrior cast, they can't get married until like their first kill. So it's like that's just how like ingrained it is to them. So that's how their fathers help them when they're young and stuff like that. Do it when they're going through puberty. And we eventually won. We beat them. And I remember there was the master was wounded. I remember seeing him getting shot, and he like drug himself behind like a table. And I walked up, and I was kind of mocking him as he died, because I don't know, I didn't like him. And I was saying, "Ooh, that looks pretty bad. There's something I could do for you, but I think I'll just stand here and watch you bleed out. I just basically said to him, I just wanted to watch him bleed out. And leader didn't like that. He said, finish him. So I shot him. And I remember two of his men were killed, were shot in the head. You know, because like I said, their armor really isn't used for, you know, long range weapons. It's more like up close. Two of them got shot in the head. We had other wounded and stuff. They could handle it. And he went right up to him and he grabbed them by this weave of braid and he kind of stepped on their face and he ripped all the braids off their head. And that's like all he took with him. And, you know, part of the skull and everything came off because they were shot in the head. And when we came back to the ship, I remember, I think almost like he wanted me to see, like he left the door open. He went to like one of the wives of the men, or the queens, as they call it, of the men that was shot. And they were wearing like white gowns, the women at the time. And he gave her like the pile of braids, you know, all of it. And then she, like the queen, would like rip it off piece by piece, like braid by braid. And the other women like stood in like a line and they would wait in line and take like a braid at a time. So she was like ripping it off the braid and give it to each one of his wives. And that's like why they did it. And then I remember I went back to two women I was with and there was like a bath waiting for me and they bathed me. And it was almost like a purification kind of process. And they undid the braids and they were humming as they did it. And I remember that part. And yeah, so we eventually went back to their home world. And I remember seeing like the palace. It looked almost like the pennant from the World Series trophy. It was like a tall building, a little bit smaller, the smallest, a little bit bigger, the biggest. It was like in like a round kind of thing. It was just separate buildings. And that was like the city, and the tallest was where the king was. And I remember looking back, and she said, "Look at the ship." And I looked at the ship, and it did look like almost like the Battlestar Galactica ship. It was like, but it was a darker kind of haze gray. It was a real dark haze gray. And went on the ship, and I played guitar for him. I remember that, and I gave him a guitar. I had like a $10,000 guitar ordered for him or something like that, and I gave him one. I met the queen, I met him, and they ate fish, and it was really good fish. It was like the best food I ever had in my life. And the XO was there. Robert was there at the time. And
I was just gonna, yeah, before you got too far ahead of yourself, sort of like this one.
yeah, it had like the buttresses on the sides for the propulsion system
Okay.
and all that stuff.
So this was the craft that you were stationed on.
Mm-hmm. It looks similar to that, yeah.
All
I
right,
don't think
so
it really had the ribs on it like that. It was more smooth.
maybe more like this one.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, it's just
So you went to
we
to their home world to get some kind of ceremony.
yeah, like we won and it was just like a big deal and
Hmm.
met the king and all that stuff and we had fish and the XO was there and we were talking and stuff. You know, Robert, he was there and the CO was there. That was the first time I met the commanding officer and he couldn't stand me. Like he hated my guts. And I remember I asked Robert why he hated me so much before I left the Navy. He said because they didn't accept him the way they accepted you. He said he was jealous of you. And
So the CEO of this Tajitan group.
no, of St. Morgan in England, like my chain of command.
Oh, that guy. Oh, back. Okay, so yeah, folks, you got to go back to part one. Listen about that.
Yeah.
So he was jealous, but he was smarter than you. But I guess he wasn't as
No. The
accomplished as you.
XO, the executive officer, was smarter than me.
Oh,
That was
okay,
the second in command. The
okay.
CO hated my guts. The commanding officer, the skipper, you know, of the base, the commanding officer, he hated my guts. And I met him for the first time. And I met that one English guy was there whenever I first walked through that metal detector that told me to walk through. Like I said, I think he was Kruger and he was like their personal security detail. And he was always with them. And I was on their home world for a while and I wanted them to kind of like learn about us. I wanted them to help us more than anything else. And you know, I was helping them and
So did you get to stay there a very long time?
yeah, I was there for a while.
Like how long?
Years.
You think? Huh.
Yeah, years. I was there for years. And it looked very temperate. It was like it looked like the Rockies or like Norway or something like that. But they had total control over their world, so there wasn't cold or anything like that. There was a lot of pine trees, a lot of mountains, a lot of granite, a lot of rivers and streams and lakes and stuff like that. A lot of fish. Um, I remember there was no bugs. They got rid of their bugs somehow, so you could just leave windows open in your house. There was like cottages right outside the city where you stayed in like these small cottages, and it was this kind of like it was kind of like in the woods, but you could just look right out your front door and you could see the main city, and you could just walk there. And they I started taking up all kinds of like recreational things. I didn't know what to do. I started teaching kids how to play music. I started learning different songs. And when I was in the Dark Fleet, they allowed me all access to the ship's computers music, and I listened to mostly 60s and 70s because that's like what my parents listened to when I was growing up as a kid. And it's probably some of my favorite music still. And yeah, I missed my parents. I really couldn't remember my parents, and it felt like if I could remember them, I could remember who I used to be. And so I was always just attracted to that music. And like I said, I was always allowed to listen to it in Dark Fleet. So I would play them music like that. I would start playing them just rock, 60s rock and blues. And we started like setting up a stadium, and I taught all my kids when they were young how to play and everything. And we just started playing, and I smoked fish. They didn't smoke fish. And I had a smoking box made for me. You can send things with your smart glass pad to it's almost like a printing, like a 3D printer kind of facility, but it's much more advanced where they can just create things. So I'd go into town, and there was always a woman behind a desk, and she was like, "What are you doing? What are you doing with this?" And I was like, "I'm gonna smoke fish." I made like a bow. I started the bow fish, and I had a bow made. She said, "What are you gonna do with this?" I'm like, "Fish with it." She always asked me. I remember I got Leader and his son, the bow fish, with me, and they really didn't do things like that because there was really no point, because they had like automated machines that would fish for them and get all their food for them, but they enjoyed
So
it.
they had food replicators, so there's no point of cooking it yourself.
No, no, no. The Taigetans always ate real food. They said that that was part of their longevity. They would eat really fresh, real food, but they would have like just unmanned machines drop nets into the water and get fish for them and bring it back, type of thing. And they
And so they did eat meat.
they ate fish. Yeah, that was like really the only meat I remember them eating. They ate a lot of vegetables, but yeah, that like the warrior caste men would eat 3 fish a day sometimes, big fish. But they would what am I thinking?
It was during this. Go ahead.
Yeah, I started to smoke fish, and then I started teaching them like baseball and stuff like that. And we were playing baseball because, like I said, I wanted them to learn everything about us. I wanted them to learn as much as they could. I wanted them to see that we were worth like helping. We were worth saving. Like, I was just trying to teach them as much as I could. It became like my mission almost. And
Well, do they enjoy baseball?
oh, they liked it. Yeah, they liked it. And we even had like stands built, and I had my kids walking around. I had so many kids by this time. I had them like carrying like boxes with smoked fish, and I had them folded up in leaves. I would find out what leaves were non-toxic and stuff like that, and I had them folded up in leaves so they could the crowd could just grab the leaf and just eat the fish, and then just throw the leaf down. There'd be like no litter or anything like that. They wouldn't get their hands away. They could just eat it with their hands. And then we would play guitar, and we would play music afterwards. And I remember I even had like watermelon shipped in. Like I had things shipped into us and everything like that. I had a lot of pull at the time, and um,
So during this period is where you had all those children.
yeah. My dog is giving me a hassle. Pardon me, but I'm let her in.
Dog wants to be in the video, I guess.
But yes, it was this. I started making candles. I remember that. I started carving candles, like dipping it in wax many times and carving and stuff like that. I just was trying to figure out what to do and all this other stuff. I was really bored, and so I started doing that too. And I made one for the queen. I gave her a candle, and I remember the king said, "Well, where's my candle?" And I said, "Well, I already gave you a guitar, so I haven't given anything to her yet." And I said, "This one means more because I made it for you." I said, "I didn't make the guitar, but I made this for you." And I went back to my house, and then the queen came to my home and said, she said she wanted me to be the king. And I thought it was like a test. I was like, "Whoa, what are you talking about?" Like, I thought it was like a loyalty thing. And she said the king was like old and they didn't want to do it anymore or something like that. And asked me to do it. And I said, "Yeah." And the king had over 200 princesses. So when I became the king, that happened to me. And but it only lasted for about 4 months. And they would do stuff like this. They were just like using me, kind of, kind of, sort of. And they just wanted, like, I don't know, my genetics or something like that. I remember I asked the queen one time in bed. I said, "Why do I have to? Why do I have to sleep with so many women?" I said that, and she said, "We must ensure the survival of your lineage," is what she said. And I remember one night in bed, she just said, "You're not going to be king tomorrow." And I was like, "What?" I just kind of blew it off like it was a joke. And then I woke up in the morning, and leader was there, the male leader, and they knew I would listen to him because he became my best friend after a while. And he said, "You have to go now." And I was like, you know. So I left, and I remember I kind of became like a hermit for a couple of weeks. I had a tent made for me, and I stayed out in the woods. And I remember the XO came to visit me, and he said, "Are you all right?" And I said, "I feel like I failed." And he said, "Well, you didn't fail." I said, "That's what everybody keeps on telling me, that it feels like I failed." And I said, "Don't worry, your daughter's safe," because he would always throw up, if I ever said something like, "Well, what if I just stayed here, rather than going back and being tortured and everything?" And he said, he would always say, "Don't say that, Daryl. They'll take it out on my daughter. It's like, don't make my daughter pay for something that you did." He would say to me. And he, so that happened.
So people in the chat are asking if they called you King Daryl.
No, well, no, they called me the Bull. Is what my nickname was, the Bull, because there's stars in the constellation of Taurus from Earth. So that's what they called me. They called me the Bull. That was like my title. But
so in that culture, going to visiting a harem is culturally acceptable. That's what everybody does. Does that.
Well, for the king and stuff like that, yeah. And like I said, the warrior caste would have about 30 wives on average. And like the women, it's like 30-to-1 like ratio with the women. It's just like how they're balanced out. It's just like they're balanced to be that way. Like I said, it's not like anything wrong or anything like that. It's just there's a lot more women than there are men. And they said that oh, well, when we were fighting on the ship to begin with, we got souls back. I forgot about that. And we got the soul of Elder back. And I wanted to give it to a mother personally. So I gave her the soul. It was like in cubes. And then from the cubes, you would put them into like something that looked almost like urns. And you could like keep souls that way. So they couldn't get away, or, you know what I mean? You could, and then that's how like the reptiles would put them in machines and stuff like that. But certain souls, they didn't want the Taigettans to get back, because Earth is a rarity when it comes to not remembering your past lives. There's some sort of device they put around Earth that, I don't know what it does. It does something to your soul, hurts it, tortures it, electrocutes it, so you forget your past life. And but most other beings in the universe remember their past lives. So you don't want to, you don't want to kill like a really high up reptile and just wound them going back into circulation. Because as far as I can tell, one of the main parts of the universe is one big soul recycling machine. As far as I could tell, one of the secrets or whatever, if you want to know something like that. But so she liked me, and I had no idea she liked me. And we went back on the ship, and we were back on a ship again. And I remember Mother asked me. She says, "I want to, have a child, a boy, and I'm going to use the soul." They do stuff like this. She wanted to use the soul of a elder for a son, and she says, "I want you to be the father." And I mean, I loved her and stuff, so I said okay, and I did it. And it was weird. You didn't go up to your other wives and ask them if it was okay. I always went up to like leader. If it was like a woman was available, I would say, is it okay if she was sent anybody else? And he said, yeah, you can do it. You can go. And I would ask him for like permission to make sure I wasn't stepping on anybody's toes or anything like that. And I remember I went back to Sparu and I told her, I said, I'm going to have a son with Mother. And she started crying and I didn't know why. And so I went back to Mother and I told her what happened. And she said, that's because I told her that she's going to have to leave you. You're with me now. And I told Leader about it, and he seemed kind of upset, but he actually knew what was happening. And we went back to their home world again. We were on the ship for a few months and went back to their home world. And I was just with Mother the whole time. And she was older than me and didn't do anything. And I miss Faru more than anything else. And I wanted to be with her more than anything else. But she had more political power, more political pull. It became political on their home world. It was weird. It was almost like the tech or something kind of kept them in line. And they became, I wouldn't say human, but things like jealousy and things like that became more apparent on their home world. And I remember she said, I was telling Leader, I was like having a really bad time. The man, we were like, I asked if I could have dinner at their home that evening with him and her, and they said yeah. And then I asked them if we could talk outside, and we sat outside on the grass and we were like looking up at the stars, and it was night. And I said, I was trying to explain to him what it was like, what I was going through. And I said, I think it's like what you go through when you rut. I was like, it's like painful to me to not be with Swaru. It's just all I think about, and I can't stop thinking about her, and I didn't know what to do. I was telling him how hard it was for me. And then that night he brought his wife over, Leader. And she said, do you think I'm beautiful? And he was just standing there. And I said, yeah. I said, you're a beautiful woman amongst beautiful women. I always thought she was really pretty. And she said, why didn't you ever tell me this? And I said, well, because we're friends and I didn't want anything to get in the way. And I was looking at Leader when I said that. And it's really rude for them. If they're talking to you, it's not considered rude to talk about somebody in like the third person, or is this, they're not even there. That's not considered rude to them. But if someone's talking to you and you look at the other person that you're talking about, it's considered very rude. And she like yelled at me out loud. She said, I'm talking to you. And I said, I don't know. What do you want me to say? I said, we're friends, and maybe I think too much. She said, you do think too much. And I said, what do you want from me? And he said, I'm going to leave now. And he just left the house. And then we became a couple after that. And it turned out that she was half human. She told me on later on. Her father was from Earth. And so she became my queen. She had more political power just as much as Mother. So she pushed Mother away from me. And I was able to, she said, I'm going to have a son with you, or a daughter with you. And you can be with Sparu, and we'll get rid of Mother. And it was just like it was a weird political thing that was happening to me. And I agreed to it. But she said, but I want to be your queen. And so I agreed to that. So then Leader became my queen. And then I was with Sparu again. And then we got to a point where I was always like talking to the king. They always wanted to hear what I had to say and stuff like that. And I said, why don't you help us? Because mother came at me. She tried to attack me, and I had to like hold her down. She came and she went real crazy. And I remember a leader said it was because she was age regressed too many times. If you get age regressed too many times, it does like psychological damage to you, even to them. And
So they can live past the age of 3,000 if they
they
get
can,
age
yeah,
regressed.
they can age regress themselves. But if they do it too many times, like for humans, it's 40 years. If you get age regress more than 40 years, that's why they only do 40 years tops. Like you can do 20 years, and then they can ask you if you want to do another 20 years. Because if you do 40 years, or if you do 60 years, it does psychological damage to you and age regression. If you get age regress 60 years, but you can do 40 and it doesn't do anything wrong, anything bad to you. But them, you know, they live so much longer, so it's probably more like, I don't even know, 500 years each age regression or something like that. But so yeah, she was just kind of,
Do you,
crazy.
Daryl, do you happen to know like what's the oldest some of these age regressed Tajitans lived up to?
I have no idea. Yeah, I'm
Hmm.
sure thousands and thousands of years old.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, even the king, even he looked kind of almost like middle aged. You know, like he was kind of, he had like silver kind of brushed back hair, and he had that kind of look, like I said, like the high cheekbones. The cheekbones were starting to get high and stuff, but he didn't look that old. And I said, none of you do anything. That's all you do. I said, I was being attacked, and you just were wide eyed, and your mouths were open, and I showed them like how they look whenever things are happening, and they do that a lot. They just kind of stand back and they just don't react. And I said, it's like that on Earth. It's like you're just watching us suffer, and you're letting us suffer, and you don't help us. You stare and you watch, and you don't do anything. And I said, and I knew about I was told about, the little ones in the underground. I said, if you tell the people what they're doing to our little ones, they'll fight. They'll fight for you. And he said, how do I know that you would fight for me? And it was a whole crowd was there, and I had all my men back there too, in the very back. And I basically just told them to sound off. And, they sang like a song, like a cadence type military song, and they all did it together. And he said, did you tell them to do that? And I said, if you're asking me if I told them to do that yesterday, no, I taught them that months ago. And he said, well, why did they do that? And I said, they did that because I trained them, they trust me, and they die for me, just like I'd die for you. And he said, why would you die for me? And I said, because you're my king. And he said, but you were king once. He said, aren't you jealous? And I said, no, it made me kind of arrogant, and I didn't want to do it anymore. And so he agreed, and he started sending people to the underground bases. And we went. I was with leader and two warrior casts, female leader, my new queen. And she wanted to come, and I said, you can't come. She insisted on coming. And I told her, well, then you're going to have to wear armor. And she didn't want to wear any of the suits. She just wore like the blue suit they have. I said, you're going to get hurt. And she just insisted on, no, I'm wearing this. So I said, okay. And we went to the moon. By this time, the moon was ours. And we used the same portal that I went into to go into my original base of St. Morgan. And I'm just telling this now. I waited now because I know everything's already transpired. So it's already happened. And I saw, the little ones in the cages. And it was like me, her, and the two warrior casts. And we were just armed. She had nothing, but the three of us were armed. And I saw the cages, and it made me really upset. And I got really mad. And we heard somebody coming. So we went to the back and like against the wall, kind of in the shadows, and just waited because it was dark. We were in like a cave, it was really dark. And it was a man and a woman, and they were talking about who they're going to take out first. It was like a daily routine to them. They're like, all right, let's take out, number 5 and number 6 because they haven't had a pint in a long time, and we'll get a pint out of them, and blah blah blah. And they were just talking about what they were going to do with them. And they have these small little concussion grenades, and I set the diameter of the concussion and the power of it, and I just rolled it towards them. and it went off and it knocked him down. I didn't want him dead. I just wanted him knocked down because I wanted something from him first. I just wanted to know. And I remember he was laying on his back and she was laying, or they were both laying on their stomach. It hit him in the back and they were on their stomach. And I took my foot and I rolled him over. And he saw me and he started laughing like crazy, hysterical. And I started like kind of kicking him in the stomach and telling him to shut up. And I said, these little ones, I said, you would do this to my little ones too, wouldn't you? And he smiled and he said, yes. And I pointed at the ones behind me and I said, and you would do it to theirs as well, wouldn't you? And he said, I would. So I shot him. I just wanted to know that this guy was like no good. You know, I wanted like a verbal kind of confession.
So was this person human, or was he some kind of Draco
He was a human.
shapeshifter?
He was human. Yeah.
Okay.
And
was he the NAZI?
I'll get to that later. This is all kind of come together.
Okay, go ahead.
And the woman was getting up and she was trying to run away, but she fell down and she kind of like scurried on her back. And her last words were, no, please don't. And I shot her. And I said, we got to find a way to get these little ones out. I said, we have to find a dolly or something. I can't let them out of the cages. They'll run away. And I remember Leader, the woman, she said, no. She said, let them out. And I said, are you sure? And she said, yeah. So we started opening up the cages. And she did this thing where I don't know what she did, but she like spread her arms out almost to like hold them or something like that. And they all ran to her. They all like ran out of their cages. And
Daryl, let me pause you for a second. Some of these kids in cages are reported to be very feral. And other times, if they're part of this, if they're being trained to be a super soldier or being experimented on that way, then they would be a little bit more receptive. So, in your opinion, were they feral, or I mean, like wild, like crazy, or
they were absolutely feral. They were, like I said, the ones that were white as sheets and their eyes are dilated. They probably couldn't speak a word of any kind of language. Nobody ever talked to them or held them or anything like that. But I don't know, like Tibetan women can do things like that. It was weird. It was just like she held her arms out and they all ran to her and they like held onto her legs and her arms. And even the ones that couldn't like hold her, they held onto each other to get closer to her. And we did that in like 2 other places. And we were, I kind of messed something up. Okay, never mind. But the people in this cave were like all yelling, it's the king, it's the king. And I was like, why are they yelling that? I was like, how do they know? Or I think the king thing happened later. I'm sorry, this is like a long kind of timeline to figure out. But they were yelling that the whole time, like it's the king, and I couldn't figure out why. And we eventually went back into the portal, got back, went to the portal and got back into the moon. And then we're on the moon and we took off in the ship and went back. And then the kids went through some sort of healing. I don't know, they had to help them somehow on the home world. But yeah, then that happened. And then I remember we were back on the world and I started teaching them football. And it was only like warrior cast were playing football. And I remember we had like a stadium, and something that's strange that I remember was when we were building the stadium, the men didn't have their shirts on, and they kind of like glistened almost like fish, like rainbow, like almost like oil was coming out of their pores. Like when you first take a fish out of water and the way it's kind of rainbow, like the fish oil on its scales and everything, their skin was kind of like almost like glistening rainbow, like oil was coming out of their pores or something as they sweated, as they worked. And that was something I remember. And I remember I saw we were playing football and Leader's son was running. He was like, doing his thing, and he was playing the game. And I asked his dad, do you think it's safe? And he said, he'll be all right. And it was almost like he was at Tourette's. He was like yelling at people, like telepathic. He was really like angry and mad, but he wanted to play the game. And he married my first daughter. We had like an arranged marriage kind of thing where he married my first daughter. And it was at the end of the game, and she already had the baby. They had a baby together. And she was still bonding with the baby. And the game was over, and I remember the XO and the CO were there. And I started calling the CO Stick. I remember Robert said that to me, the XO. I said, why did I call him Stick? And he said, because he thought he was a stick in the mud. Because everything I tried to do, he would just shoot it down. I remember one time we were playing baseball, and I said, we should get the kids some overalls and get some red-bone hounds out here and have them all running around with watermelon and chasing red-bone hounds with overalls on. And people would think this was Earth. Like, nobody would know the difference. We could just record it and say, like, you know, alien world, and like nobody would know anything different. And then I remember, you know, the CO, the skipper, he said, I don't think that's a very good idea at all, Daryl. Like, that's not a good idea at all. And I said, wow, you're just a stick in the mud, huh? I said that, and then that just became his name. I just started calling him Stick after that. And we got into a fight one time, a fist fight with him. He was just an ass. I remember that guy from Kruger, the English guy, his security came up and was going to come up to me and like do something. And I remember he just looked straight up, and like he looked up, and I could tell like a bunch of warrior cats stood up all at the same time, and he just backed up and helped the CO up. And I said, like, why do you treat me this way? Why do you do this to me? And he said, because this isn't you. He said, you're just a drunk. He said, you're just a drunk back home. That's all you are. He said, this isn't you. You know, you're nothing like this. He's like, and he was just jealous of me. Anyways, it was at the end of our first football game, and the XO came up to me, and he said, Daryl, it's time to go. And I said, where are we going? He said, it's time to go home. And I said, at first, and I knew exactly what he meant. I said, I'm not going. I just said no. I'm not. I remember I went to Svaru, and I told her, I was like, well, I'm not going. You know, I'm not going. And she's like, well, you have to go. And it was because the king later on told me that making me king for a time wasn't just for that, for my genetics or whatever. It was to save me, you know, because once Aquino found out he was torturing a king, even if it was just a prior king, he would know he was in a lot of trouble. And it would also be a way, because I'd be back in time, it would be a way for the Taigetans to declare war on the reptiles, like legally, kind of. Not just legal, not like legally, but to get a lot of allies at the same time. Have a lot of allies that were once on the reptile side go on their side. Because torturing a king is very fucking, I mean, excuse me, no. It's a big deal, you know. It can cause a lot of your allies to turn on you. And Taigetans, they aren't necessarily the most powerful people or whatever, ETs, but I think they're probably one of the most respected, and one of the highest respected in the universe. And it would cause a lot of the allies of the reptiles to join their side. So there was like a lot of ET warfare is time travel, cat and mouse. So it's a lot of that. And she said, you have to go. And I remember the CO or the XO said, you could do another 20 years. I said, you hear that? I could do another 20 years. And I could do it with the kids and stuff. And she said, no. I said, why not? She said, it'll be harder to find you. And I said, I remember she said, he's going to try to put you back into the chair. When he does that, you're going to have to say no. He's not your friend. I said, he's going to put me in a chair and I shouldn't go in. She goes, the first time you have no choice. You're going to go in. She goes, but then you're going to be given an option to go into the chair a second time. Don't do it. I said, why not? She said, it'll be harder to find you. And I met with, I remember Leader was there. And well, my queen is like female leader. She already had a baby. So she was bonding with the baby. So I wasn't talking to her. And he came up. And he smiled, and I said, this is going to hurt. And he said, it is. And I said, I'm scared. And he just smiled, like a comforting kind of smile. And then I remember his son came up to me, and his son was kind of mad at me for being with his mom. He felt like I betrayed him, and he didn't talk to me for a long time. And he came up to me, and I said, are you still mad at me? And he said, no. And I said, I'm not your father, but you're my son. And I saw him as his son. And he kind of like outstretched his arm, and I looked over, and there was like the crowd kind of parted, and it was my daughter, and she was like wearing like a veil, like a white veil, a white dress, and she had her baby with her, and she was looking at me. She wasn't bonding with the baby anymore. It was almost like they were making it a surprise. Like it had been weeks probably since she stopped bonding with the baby, it seemed like to me. But it was almost like they wanted to surprise me with it. And she let me hold him. And I said, I kind of looked at her. I didn't say anything, but I looked at her like, why did you do this? Why did you not let me? I could have been with him for weeks. Why didn't you let me hold him? Why didn't you let me be with him? And she looked at me, and all she said was, remember. And I remember I looked at him, and I said, I'll remember. And I kissed him, and I held him, and I gave him back to her. And then I remember I said out loud, I said, all right, assholes, take me back. That's what I said to him. And I took a few paces forward, and I looked back, and the whole city was there. I mean, just about the whole world was there, like watching. And they saluted me, and the men salute like this. They put their hand over their heart, and they bow. And the women put both hands over their heart, and they bow. So it was like all of them bowed. And I started singing Woody Guthrie's So Long It's Been Good to Know You, because I knew so many songs and stuff. And I remember I said that to the XO. It was one of the things I remember. I remember when I was leaving, I sang. He said, yeah, you did. He said, why did you do that? And I said it was all I could do not to cry. So I just started to sing instead. And I remember the CEO, he said something like, have a little self-respect in front of your family. And I started like yelling the words in his ear like a little kid. I was like walking away. So long. And we went back into the ship, and I was coming back, and he said, have a seat, Your Majesty. He said that to me, and it made me really mad. And I could do something called looking down someone's timeline. And that's kind of like reading someone's future. A lot of ETs could do that, and I could do it at the time too. And I looked at him. I was mad. I was smoking mad. And I looked at him, and I shouldn't have done this, but I did it anyway. I said, you're at the end of your life. I said, congratulations, you lived a long life. And I said, your last thoughts, they're not of your kids, they're not of your wife, and they're not even of your mother. I said, your last thoughts are that I am a better man than you. I said, remember that on your deathbed. I am a better man than you. And then Robert said, you shouldn't have done that telepathically. You should have kept him in line. And went back to the moon, went back into the portal, and we were back in the base, and it was back in time when I first left. And I remember I got my head shaved, like I said, with like a number 3 or number 4 clipper. It was that same fat guy was there. The first class with the mustache was there waiting for me. And I remember I was in the back of the ship, and I was hitting the wall as we were heading back, and I was just yelling. Please don't take my babies from me, over and over again. And I was really upset. And my right hand was broken and swelled up. And he said real condescendingly to me, the first class, he said, oh, look at that, you broke your hand. And I remember the XO said, leave him alone. If I had 10 men like him, this war would be over by now. They sat me down, and I had a beard at the time, a big red beard. And they shaved my head. And then they took the guard off, and they just like took the clippers and shaved my beard off. I remember waking up, and I had like real thick stubble, and I couldn't figure out why. I also remember running my fingers through my hair, and I had like burnt little hairs in my hand. I didn't figure out why. And I rubbed my hand down my chest, and I had little burnt hairs, my chest hair. And I remember I got back into the chair, and I looked up at the XO, and I said, why would I do this? Didn't I know this was going to happen? Like I would have a family and everything, and I have to leave him. He told me that your father had a heart attack, and you wanted to try to bring medical technology that would keep that from happening to other people. And it gave me some sort of, I don't know, relief, meaning or something. And they put me back down into third density. And you get almost like a type of amnesia, kind of, sort of. And I just remember being drugged. Like I said, the tops of my feet when I woke up were dirty, but not the bottoms. I looked at my bottoms, but not. And I was being drugged and I was naked. And it was we'll call her the goth, and we'll call him the goon. The goth, like I met her the first night I was on this new command and at a bar, and she was like hitting on me, and she just looked like a goth chick, and she wore like an inverted pentagram and all this stuff. She always wore those like plaid skirts, like mini skirts. She was a little chunky, but I thought she was cute. And one of the first classes called me over at the bar, and he said, don't mess with her. I said, why not? He said she's dirty or something like that. He's like, you don't want to. Like they knew about her or something like that. And anyways, I was being drugged by these two people. Oh, I saw her in a bar like a few weeks later, or 2 weeks later. It was after I came back, but I didn't realize what happened. And she was like scared to death of me. She immediately got away from me. And I was being drugged, and it was a man on my left and a woman on my right. And they had me underneath my arms, and they're dragging me. And she said, he's heavy. I'm tired. Let's take a break. And she just kind of let go of my right side, and I was just kind of hanging there, and he's holding on to my left side. And the cages they stopped me right in front of the cages with the little ones. And that's when this little female like scurried up to the cage and slammed her hands on the front. I got a good look at her, and her eyes were just, and she had like pure black eyes because they were so dilated. She was just pure white, and I remember looking up and I saw all these cages. But like I said, I had amnesia. I didn't know what was happening. And I looked past them, and there was like a chimera, I guess is the best way you could explain it, where it was like the bottom half of a spider and like the torso of a man coming out of it. It was big. And its arms, like it had black, like real thick spider hair starting at the elbows that went all the way to its hands. And its hands were like the claws on a spider's leg, but two black prongs that looked like for hands. And it had like fangs coming out of its mouth, like a spider. And it had eyes in the front, but they were pure black. But then the eyes went up the sides of its head like a spider, and it had a little tuft of hair on top. And it was just looking forward, and it was behind like almost like zoo cage bars. Like it was like a separate room where there was a thick bar to keep it in the cage. And it was like the kids, the little ones in the cages were in front of this cage. And it just looked straight ahead. It didn't look at me, and it was motionless, just like a spider would be. It didn't move at all. And I knew it was looking at me because it had, the eyes on the side of its head. And then they drug me past it, and then they dropped me on the ground into a room. And the Satanist, I was in the room with the Satanist, and they were just saying, let's just feed him the max. And I remember Robert said that that's what it was called, the spider hybrid, whatever it was. And I said, why do they do that? And he said, the reptiles like to do it. I said, why? He said, because our DNA is so malleable, and they like to splice it with other things like that, because we have the most malleable DNA in pretty much the universe. And that's why they like us so much. That's why ETs harvest our DNA so much, because they can splice with just about anything. And then I remember just seeing like a red cloaked figure, and I saw these two black hands that were shiny like the palms, and it gouged my eyes out with like its thumbs, and then threw me into a healing tank and then put me back out. They were just throwing me in a healing tank. They wanted it quick. They wanted me to heal right away, not like a med bed. They just wanted it real fast. And then I remember that same red cloak figure came by, and he took a knife, like a dagger out, and he just like pricked like my belly, and my intestines just flew out like spring loaded. And it vibrated my whole body as it was coming out. And it really didn't hurt until it hit the end, and that hurt like hell. And then he grabbed my intestines and went behind me and strangled me with my own intestines. Then they threw me back in the healing tank. And I remember the goon was trying to keep my intestines in, like fold them right, because they weren't going in properly. So they had one of the drones come in. I guess they programmed it for human anatomy or something, and it knew how to fold my intestines in perfectly. And it kept on like kneading me back and forth in like my stomach, because like my skin was growing over its hands, and it was hurt every time it like stuck, and it was kind of like pulling it off over and over and over again until my stomach, my skin finally went over and healed it. And then remember I woke up again. I was on like a rack. It was like a torture rack. And I saw Michael Aquino, and he said, hi, Daryl, remember me? And he was like, it was all real theatrical and weird, and I didn't know what was happening. I still had this amnesia. And
Was he dressed up like in a bunch of satanic looking gowns with capes or black and
I
red?
don't remember. Maybe I don't remember. I might have just had his. I think he just had his uniform on or something. I had his army uniform.
Hmm.
And he said, "Remember me?" And he's like, "Well, let me show you who I really am," or something like that. And no, that's not what happened. It was a reptile was in front of me, and it looked like a black snake. I kind of ruined the story, but oh well. It looked like a black racer's head coming out of the torso of a man. It was really shiny and scaly, and it had a red hood and a red cloak. And he said, "You remember me?" And I said, and I just looked at him, and he's like, "Let me show you." And he kind of like inched back into the back of the room, back near the shadows, and Michael Aquino kind of appeared, and he's like, "You remember me now?" And it was like a thing, and I remember it almost like it looked like he was trying to kind of splice the images together. It was like an illusion he was doing, and I think that's where like the whole reptilian shapeshifter David Icke stuff comes from. Is that's I think that's what's happening. It's like a trick. And I don't know if it was just because who or what I was, or if I just came at a fifth density. I looked past, the avatar, the meat puppet, as I called it, Michael Aquino, and I looked at the reptile behind him, and I said, "Nice trick." And he came out of the shadows, and he yelled at Aquino to sit down, the meat puppy, because it was a soulless, like I said, they're like soulless bodies. They usually just sit down whenever you take your consciousness or the soul out of them or whatever. And I remember that guy Orlando told me later on. He said, there's a machine. People would kind of say stuff to me to see if I remembered stuff. They were always like, the XO had people like watching out for me to make sure I didn't have any memories. And he said, there's a machine where they can extract your soul. They can take your soul out, but they can't do it too young because the body is mostly sedentary. He said he saw Aquino sitting in the break room. He did a 12-hour shift. When he came back out, Aquino was sitting in the same exact place in the break room, didn't move an inch. And he said that first class told him that there's some sort of machine that can extract the soul out of a body, and then a different consciousness can then go into that body. And I said, well, what's the thing controlling the body? He said, I don't know. And I don't think he really knew. And he said they can't do it too young because the body's mostly sedentary. If it's a little kid, its bones would get brittle and it would get sick and die. But they have to do it before puberty for some reason. So they do it when they're around 9 or 10 years old. And he told me that. And yeah, so I think that's where the whole reptilian shapeshifter stuff comes from. It's almost like a trick or an illusion that they can pull on you. And but he saw himself as Aquino. It was like weird. He almost had like a split personality kind of thing, where he called himself Aquino, even though he was like this black reptile thing with wear a red cloak. And he
So
tortured me.
So all this was at this underground facility.
It was at the same base. Yeah, it was at St. Morgan. All this was happening,
including the spider-like creature.
Yeah, including that. But it was in like the deepest part. Like we were in caverns. We were no longer like in a concrete base. We were like in cave. We were like in underground caverns, like caves. Okay. It was really deep.
And how big was this spider-like creature?
It was as big as you would think, like a man's torso, in comparison to like if it was growing out of like the body of a spider, if that makes sense. It was big. It was huge. It was really big. And its legs were huge.
Okay. Well, do you have more of the story? Because we're probably coming near the end of the show, and I still had a bunch of questions. So would you perhaps maybe we can I think we're gonna need to bring you back on again, because we haven't even gone over everything you were told about the future.
Okay, I'll do that then. And basically how I got out of it is, God, I wanted to tell this part because it goes with the rest of the story. We can't run it a little bit long.
I'll tell you what, audience members, do you want this to keep going? I'm sure they're probably going to say yes, but I'll tell you what, if you're willing to do it, we can keep going.
Yeah. So eventually I got to a point where I was being tortured so much, I just remembered everything. The amnesia wore off. And I said, I remember. And I looked at Aquino and I said, I remember. And he's like, what do you remember? And I looked at the goon and I said, I killed you. And I looked at the goth and I said, I killed you too. And that reptile I poked in the eye, the warrior cast, he was standing in the back in the middle. And I said, I killed so many that looked like you. I don't remember if I killed you or not. And then there was a Satanist and like behind them, just wearing cloaks, and I couldn't see him. And I think those were the guys at the bar on base. And I said, I can't see any of you. And then I looked at Aquino and I said, I've never seen one like you before. I don't think I killed you, but we were shooting down dozens of your ships every day sometimes. So I probably killed you because they were trying to escape Earth. And then I remember the goth just out of the blue said, you killed me? Like she just screamed out. And it's really bad to speak at a turn in front of a reptile. And I looked at her and because I told him I was the king of the Taigetans. And I said, you've committed an act of war. I remember saying that to him. And he said, you hear the dog barking? It's the puppy. But I said that. I said, I'm the king of the Taigetans. You committed an act of war. And, you know, this is what was going to get me out. And she said, yeah, you killed me? Like, she couldn't believe it. She goes, but you're a Taigetan. You're supposed to be good. You're not supposed to kill people. Like, she knew about him. And I looked at her and I said, did you think we were all gumdrops and lollipops? I said, if you kill our little ones, we will come for you. And she said, yeah, but you don't know any of them. What do you care? And I said, I was on the moon. I slept with the honeypots. Those are my little ones. And she said, yeah, but she was just saying, you know, what do you care? She couldn't get over the fact. She couldn't wrap her head around the fact that this already happened. Like, that's how like she was trying to talk me out of this, but this had already happened. It was the two people. I even told him, I said, I hit you with a concussion grenade. I looked at him and I said, you were laughing hysterically and you wanted to die. So I shot you. And then I looked at her and I said, you tried to get away, but you tried to run, but you couldn't. You fell over and your last words were, no, please don't shoot me. And I shot you. And she couldn't get over the fact that this happened. And I looked at her and I said, I looked at her getup and I said, you know, she had a cloak on and a hood. And I said, when you became a Satanist, did you think you would help little old ladies cross the street or go to bake sales? Or did you want power? I said, does drinking the blood of my little ones make you feel powerful? And she just started saying, kill him, fucking kill him. She came at me and Kino told her to stop and everything else. Anyways, that's what saved me, was the whole thing about being the king for a while. He realized that he messed up. They let me go. Like, there was not a snowball's chance in hell they were going to let me go until I brought that up. So it was like the Taigetans, like I said, they do like a cat and mouse kind of time travel warfare. And that's like how it happened. And okay, so now I'm at the XO's office. He does a thing where he appears in front of me, you know, a couple times. I don't know what's happening. And then he says, you got to go back in the chair. I said, I remember her talking to me, Svaru, and then she said, don't trust him. He's not your friend. Don't go back in the chair. He's like, I am your friend. And he was saying things like, they were just using you. I said, well, you used me. Things like that. And so when he starts telling, he realizes I'm not going back in the chair. He was like a father to me. He even said that. He said, you were like a son to me. And he was pretty much just, I think, giving me advice for what I would see in the future, what was going to happen. And he said, you know, I saw your dad. And I said, what do you mean you saw my dad? He said, through the looking glass. That's exactly how he put it. And I said, what's that? He's like, you've seen the looking glass. And I said, why did you want to see my dad? He said, I wanted to see if he walked like you. I said, what do you mean? He's like, you know the way you bob up and down and swagger. I said, you mean bebopping around? And he's like, is that what he called it? I said, yeah, it's what he used to call it, bebopping around. And I said, did he? He said, yeah. And so then once he brought up the looking glass, they started telling me, like, there's going to be fires everywhere. He's like, there's going to be a point where there's going to become fire. He said, the first ET tech you're going to see is the smartphone. That's based off the smart glass pad. And then he said, you're going to see fires everywhere. I said, what do you mean? He's like, a third of Australia is going to burn down. It has to do something. But yeah, eucalyptus trees, flammable, the sap in it. And, koala bears are going to become extinct or nearly extinct. They're going to be put on the endangered species list. He said the West is going to be on fire. He said the Midwest is going to be on fire. And he just
Daryl,
said, huh?
Daryl, do you think this has happened already? I mean, we know about the Paradise, California fires, but are you foreseeing a lot more fires still?
No, this is what happened. Remember Australia like nearly burned down to the ground? You remember that a couple years ago, like 3 years ago?
Okay.
Australia was burning, man, for like a year. But yeah, he said that that was one of the first signs you would see. He said that he said there'd be riots everywhere, and he said they'd be burning down cities, and he was talking about like Antifa, and he was talking about all that stuff, and he said they were going to start letting people go out of prisons and stuff like that. I said, like, why do they do this? And he said because they're scared. He's like, they know they're losing and they're scared. And he went back to that whole. I remember I saw that on another YouTube show. He said it was like, but he added this part at the end. He said it's like two master chess players, and they both know they're going to lose. The winner knows he's going to win in 8 moves, and the loser knows he's going to lose in 8 moves. But the loser won't resign. That's how he put it. So he's taking pawns. So that's what all this burning of forests is. That's what all these riots are. That's what all this burning of cities. It's the Satanists, the bad guys, whatever you want to call them. They're taking pawns. They know they're going to lose, but they're fighting down the whole way. And he said that they're going to start releasing after all this is over. And then he brought up, and I know you said something about it, but he did bring up about JFK Jr. And he says that he turns out he was still alive. And I know you had a different story about that, and then he said people think that Princess Diana and Michael Jackson would come back to life, but he said that's not going to happen. And at the time, I said Michael Jackson, he was like, he died. It was like he wasn't dead yet. He's like, yeah, he died, and he died because he was trying to come forward about all the stuff happening in the music industry, little ones and stuff like that, and they killed him for it. And I said, is it true about him? Is it true about Michael Jackson, what they say? And he said, yeah, but he looked kind of sad, and he said it's not his fault. I said, what do you mean? He said his dad pimped him out, like to the music industry when he was a little kid. His dad molested him, and his dad pimped him out. And he said, and that's why they killed was it Barry White? How he died mysteriously in the hospital, and not even his own daughter was allowed to see him. Only his lawyer and doctors were allowed to see him because he was trying to come forward about what they did to Michael Jackson when he was a kid. And they were torturing him slowly, like poisoning him slowly, painfully, and recording it and showing it to the others, like in the biz, to let them know, like, if you try to come forward, this is what's going to happen to you. And he said that what's going to happen is, like, they're going to start going into people's offices. They're going to put a piece of paper down on the table with a pen on it. They're going to slide it forward. They're going to show on a smartphone all the evidence they have on them, what they did to the little ones. If you even partook in this drug, that's going to be enough because you know where the drug comes from to give you an execution. And he said that they're going to either be able to sign a confessional and they'll get a shot and go to sleep and won't wake back up, or if they plead not guilty, they'll go before a tribunal and they'll get found guilty anyways, and they'll be executed by firing squad with no reload. He said that was like part of the thing, and that's illegal, I guess. So in other words, if they get popped in the liver and it takes them like 5 hours to bleed out, then that's just the way it is. So you can either go to sleep or you can get shot by firing squad. He told me he said, what happened to me for him happened 5 days ago. Oh, man, this is happening so quick. I got to try to get all the way, though. I'll try to do it. I don't know if I ever write something. I don't know. But anyways, he was forced to partake in the torture. They forced him to do it because of his daughter and everything else. And I didn't remember at the time, though. But he just, like, I didn't remember a lot at the time. And he said, he saw something 3 days ago, he said. And I said, what was it? He said, I can't say, because I said, he said that, the Clintons were going to go away. The Obamas are going to go away. They're going to be executed. They're going to be executed. He talked about Bush and McCain and all this stuff. He said McCain just died of natural causes, but they tried to get him. And he was on the same ship when McCain did that wet start and killed like 137 people. He was on that aircraft carrier, the XO. He used to fly F-4 Phantoms in Vietnam. And anyways, I said, oh, the Clintons are going to be hung? And he said, yeah. And I said, oh, good. He said, why? I said, because they're murderers. And he said, he got right up in my face and he said, how did you know that? He said, how did you know that? And I said, anytime somebody investigates the Clintons, they always wind up jumping out of a window or, shoot themselves. And he goes, oh, that, right. Okay. And he's like, but you don't understand, Daryl. He said, they're serial killers. He's like, they're like Jeffrey Dahmer. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, I can't say. And he just wouldn't say. And I eventually got him to talk about it. And he talked about how there was a video of Hillary Clinton cutting off a little girl's face and like mocking her with the face, like putting it over her face. And he said they got all this evidence on him, all this stuff on him. And it's all going to come to light.
So this was back in 1999 when you were getting debriefed.
No, this was
or
2005.
Okay.
Yeah, this was 2005. And something else he said, and I know this is what he told me though. It's a little far fetched, but it's what he told me. He said, they made a movie about you. And I said, really? He said, yeah. I said, is it any good? He goes, nah. But he goes, well, it's good, but it's not very accurate. I said, what do you mean it's not very accurate? He said, well, the only thing you have in common with the protagonist is you both. He only listened to 70s. He said, you like 60s and 70s. You both missed your mother, and you were both pilots. And I said, well, what's it called? He said, you may have heard of it before. He said, it's called Guardians of the Galaxy. And I said, and I asked him when it was coming out and stuff like that, and he just told me about it. And then he went on about just all that, and he talked about the Vatican. I remember I said, seeing the little ones, I remember that I had that memory, and I said, don't you ever think about killing yourself? And he said every night. He said, I think. And I said, how? He said 45 in the mouth. And he said, I have to. He said they know I won't do it. They know I won't partake or whatever like that. But if I don't, stay quiet, they'll hurt my daughter. He just kept on saying stuff like that. And he talked about, if you think this space is bad, he said you should see the catacombs of the Vatican. I said, what do you mean? He said it's crawling with reptiles and elongated skulls. Elongated skulls live underground too, like the people with the long heads and stuff.
Those are the pre-Adamites, and they've got bodies under stasis in Antarctica, and they create avatars to occupy the Vatican, and they're basically a bunch of cannibals.
Yeah. I saw one in the underground too with a Kino, and it had like this look like it was terrified. It had huge eyes, and it just looked terrified. It watched me. I played guitar for a while, but I had to skip over all that stuff. But Kino had like a guitar like in one of his rooms or whatever in the cave, and I played for him. But he said that there's more gold in the Vatican than they thought existed in all of Earth, in all of like Earth period. And he said it was estimated to be about $1 septillion worth, enough to make everybody like 100 trillionaire and gold standard today. But getting it lower down because they didn't know that much gold existed. He said it would make everybody about 100 millionaire because it would lower the value of gold. And he said, yeah, it's all in the Vatican. And he said,
how did he say how the Vatican got so much gold?
Probably from the elongated skulls, and also from just anywhere we got gold from anywhere, whether it was from the Americas or China or whatever. I guess just the Vatican hoarded it all to themselves. And I remember I said, is it like in a vault or something? He said, no, it's just laying on the ground. He said, there's just tons of it laying on like the catacombs. And I said, well, can't somebody just go in there? He said, the only way in is through the basement of the Vatican. And that's guarded and that's locked. But as soon as you walk in, it's just laying on the ground, just tons upon tons upon tons of gold.
Did they say when that gold is going to be liberated for humanity?
Well, yeah. I mean, he didn't give me exact dates because what he said was it can be prolonged. All these events can be prolonged, but they can't be stopped. It's basically what he said. He said these things can be prolonged, but they can't be stopped. And he kept on trying to get me to go back. I refused to. And I went back home. And then Friday, I hear that same noise. They're using the 5G, put a microphone in my room. And he says, Daryl, he's like, what we talked about before, we could still do it. He's trying to make me feel like, I'm the bad guy. I messed up because I refused to go back in the chair. And he's like, but if you go back now, he promised me all this stuff. Like you'd make me stronger. You'd do all this stuff. You'd make me smarter. You'd do all this stuff for me. I thought about it and I said, no. But in the room, he's like, if you do it now, everything will be forgiven and you can go back in the chair and it'll be like nothing happened. And I sat up in my bed, and it was like 11 o'clock at night. And I couldn't see anything, but I could just hear this voice. And I said, I remember what you did to me now. I said that. And I remember Aquino said to the, oh, yeah, to the CO, he said, cut him from here to here, like the cartilage of my rib to like a little ways down. And he cut me. Then the XO cut me from where that wound stopped over about halfway through my belly. And Aquino reached into my stomach. It was the top of it was cut, and he used a sharp claw to like claw the inside of my stomach. And it was almost like a knee-jerk reaction. It made me thrash like back and forth. Like it was almost like hitting nerves or something like that. I couldn't help it. It hurt really much bad because the open wound on the stomach already was flexing the muscles. I remember you did that to me. And I said that, when I was in the Dark Fleet, they tried to get me to do, there's something common that the reptiles do. And I said, they tried to get me to do that to a woman, and I refused to do it. And he was just saying, it's because you're stronger than me, and they would have hurt my daughter and stuff like that. I said, I don't trust you. And I remember I laid back down in bed, and I kind of threw my covers over my head. He just kept on going at me. He's like, you have to go back. You have to go back. And I sat up in my bed really quick, and I said, I yelled out, I said, may God let you die with blood in your mouth. And he said, because of what he said about killing himself with the 45. And he said, Daryl, please don't say that. And I said it again. I wish I didn't say that. But I said it. I was mad. I was mad about everything. And I remember after you see the XO, you go to the CO, and the CO was just standing there, like staring at me, because they had me on an intercom phone. I remember he said he couldn't talk out loud because the Master Chief and the CO were listening on the intercom phone. And I walked in, and the CO was just like staring at me, like terrified. And I laid my papers down. I said, "How you doing, sir?" and stuff like that. And I don't know why, but I was just remembering stuff really quick. It was almost something the XO did. And whenever he cut me before, the CO, he looked up right up at me, and he said, "Not so high and mighty now, are you?" He couldn't stand me, and he cut me open. And I gave him the papers, and I grabbed the door about to walk out, and I looked up. I just kind of like looked up, so I knew my voice was being projected against the wall. And I said, "No hard feelings, huh, Stick?" And I turned around, and I looked at him, and he just looked like he saw a ghost. And I said, "Not so high and mighty now, are you?" And I walked out. That was the end of that. And I just remember processing out in Virginia, and I thought about it every day for like a week, what he told me, all the things he told me. And I just realized it was just driving me crazy. And the next week, I just said, you have to forget about this. Like, you can't think about this anymore. You'll kill yourself. You just can't do it. And then by the fourth week, I just kind of forgot about it. I don't know. That's just how my mind works. I can just kind of forget things. And it just hasn't been till lately, past few years, I remembered everything again. I mean, I always kind of remembered it, but it was just, I just forced myself to just kind of not accept it anymore. So, I mean, that's about it. It's a quick version of the end, but.
And is that when you also they told you that you're going to be on Super Soldier Talk?
No, he started looking down my timeline, as they call it.
Yeah.
He started predicting like my future. And he started saying like, yeah, you're going to do this, and you're going to do that. He wanted to see if I was going to kill myself. Because like I said, most people kill themselves in about 6 months if they remember everything, like I did, or just about everything. And he was like, this is going to destroy you there. This is going to destroy you. You don't understand. And he started looking down my timeline. He's like, well, you make it. And he's like, glad I made it. And then, yeah, he just started talking about different things. He said I would start talking about this. And yeah, and I would be on a show. I'd be on different shows on the internet, like Super Soldier Talk and all that other stuff. Because he was like looking, this wasn't stuff he saw from the looking glass. This is, as they call it, looking down one's timeline, looking like predicting their future kind of thing. You can kind of see people's outcomes when you're higher density.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to bring you back on again to talk a little bit more about some of the other future predictions, because we also had, I think you guys said Tom Hanks.
He told me that whenever he was in Australia, he was the main distributor of the drug in the world, and he said that Tom Cruise, he was like a kingpin of that drug. And yeah, they caught him in Australia, and they said he got coronavirus, and they executed him right there. And that whole coronavirus thing, they say, is like a code for they probably got put down. They probably were executed. And he told me that yeah, Tom Cruise was the head of the Scientologist. He was the main distributor of the drug for the Scientologist. And then he said, remember, he said, you know that song, Little Ghost by the White Stripes? And I said, yeah, that album was only, the Elephant was only about 2 years old, less than 2 years old. And he said that song was about the little ones in the underground bases. He said that he was allowed in the underground bases to, and he's like a big distributor. Can you scare me up some love? In other words, you put them under a lot of stress and it creates the drug, the love or whatever. And he was talking about that. And I thought I was holding a hand, but I was holding a glove or something like that. And he said that's because they never leave the cages. And they're almost like veal. Like if you touch their skin, it feels like it will fall right off of them because they don't have any kind of exercises. And I guess one of the main things I would like to say is at the end, he told me when you get your eagles, and he pointed out his rank, and he said it's based off the Roman eagle, which is a captain in the Navy, and a colonel, and all the other branches, that you know about the little ones in underground bases. And what else did he say? And you know about the secret space program too. So anybody who's like a colonel in the Army or the Marines or the Air Force or a captain in the Navy, they know about the drug, whether it's good or bad or whatever. And the main reason people were asking me in chat, stuff like that, like, did I get some kind of disclosure? Did I sign disclosure and everything like that? And I wanted to go a little more in detail about the torture. I don't. But what I'm trying to say is I don't care what I signed, and I don't care, about it because I didn't sign up to work on a base that did that. That did that to little ones, and I didn't sign up to the military to be tortured by who I thought were my own people for 2 days straight. I was tortured for 2 days. Had my skin pulled off my back, everything else you can imagine. I was burnt by fire until I went into shock. Like I said, I woke up in the morning and I had burnt hair, stubble in my head, and I couldn't figure out why on my chest hair. So what I'm trying to say is, I guess, is just do what I'm doing. Like if if you have your eagles and you know about this stuff, you know about the little ones, you know about the program, just confess. I mean, if you're worried about if they're going to hurt your family or something, is it worth it? I don't know. I can't answer that question for you, but your kids are going to grow up in a world that's run by Satanists and psychopaths. You don't want your children to live in a world like that. So just don't die like in the scum. Don't die in your belly. Die clean. Don't confess. Just talk about it. I think this year, more and more and more stuff is going to start happening. I'm not like, I can't predict it. As I said before, they can prolong it, but they can't stop it, as I was told. But I don't know. And I think that's all I have to say.
What about the Obama administration? Did they give you any information on that? Were they supposed to release the information about the secret space program or something else?
He said the people weren't ready for ETs, but we'll find out. I don't know. We'll see about that. He said that the people weren't ready. And the Obamas, I was told they were executed too. And I was even told that Obama tries to claim Kenyan citizenship. And I remember, like the whole Obama thing. Saddam Hussein just got executed like 3 or 4 years ago, and he said there's going to be a black president. I said, really? And he said, yeah. He's like, he's going to be named Barack Hussein Obama. And I said, there's going to be a president named Barack Hussein Obama. Like after Saddam Hussein just got executed like a few years ago. I was like, what, Saddam Hussein? But yeah, just and I'd like to thank everybody for the comments. And a woman sent me pictures of her horses back at home, emailed me, and it was nice. I like, everybody's comments was very nice, and I'm glad you enjoy my story. So thank you.
Yeah. And also Michelle is a MAN, but that they decided not to bring that to surface.
Oh yeah. He said that Michelle Obama is a transgender, but they just figured it wasn't really important, to bring that to the surface to people and stuff like that.
Did they give you a lot more predictions that we probably shouldn't maybe bring you back on and share another time? Or
I mean, I don't know. I went through a majority of them. I kind of
okay,
fast tracked it a bit. You know what I mean?
all
But
right,
I did it best
okay.
as I could. I don't know.
All right. Well, if we bring you on again, is there any things that you really would like to discuss
I
about?
mean, I mean, if I did come back on, I might repeat some stuff. Um, but
Okay. Well,
there was more details about family life and stuff like that.
okay. So I'll tell you what, we can maybe just bring you back on again. Not right away. Let's say let's maybe wait till July. Give it at least a month or so. Give you a break. And actually, you're probably not going to get a break because there's going to be a lot of people that want to get a hold of you to do some
Yeah, I got some
videos, which
other
is
shows coming up too. Yeah,
yeah. You're
I
going
don't
to
know
be
if you want me to plug them or not.
you're going to be very busy for a while. So yeah, sure,
Yeah.
go ahead. Who?
Well, what was his name? You knew the
There
guy.
was Tyler with
Tyler. Yeah, it's called. I got that one coming up on Tuesday.
okay. So are you thinking about maybe putting a book together or a website where people can find you a little bit
I
easier?
I mean, this is the first time I've talked about it besides with my therapist. And my therapist says I don't seem delusional. That's all he says. He was in the army and he doesn't doubt it. He said if you would have told me this 5 years ago, you know, I might not believe you. But since we have things like a pandemic and space force, he says it doesn't seem too outrageous. Oh, and another thing the XO said was you're going to be seeing a lot of meteorite activity where it looks like a lot of golden sparks kind of flying out of the sky, and they're going to say it's meteors or they're going to say it's anomalies, like northern lights and stuff like that. But it's mostly just like reptilian and gray ships getting shot down by solar ward. Because I mean, it is like if it was in the hands of Lockheed Martin and the bad guys at first, it's more like in the hands of I get they kind of own Solar Ward now. It's become like a joint task force for them. So I mean, don't be like I saw some people kind of having pessimistic kind of things. The look on this man's face, he looked like he was about to cry. The way how proud he was. He's like, you don't know how good it's going to be. He said, Daryl, it's going to be so. He said, you can work at McDonald's and still have a month-long vacation. You're not going to have to live from paycheck to paycheck anymore. There's not going to be poverty, and water's going to be clean, food's going to be clean, people are going to live longer. And there are going to be med beds and things like that. He said these things are happening. So,
And
chin up.
that's going to be in our lifetime.
Yeah, yeah. I
I
think
think
maybe, like I said, maybe this year, maybe. The only reason I'm coming forward this now is because I think he told me about the gates on DC, and he said that the politicians at first they think the army's there to help them, but then they begin to realize that the army's there to arrest them, and that's why they put the gates up. And if you listen to that one guy who was in charge of the National Guard, he was a general. He said we're here to see a peaceful transition into military power, not into the Biden administration. He didn't say that. And like I said, the XO said it's going to be a coup. I remember I said, "Oh, what side should I be on?" I said that. He said, "No, you don't understand. This is going to be a good coup." He's like, "You're going to want this coup." He's like, "Things are going to get really bad." And he's like, "You're going to want this coup."
did they mention anything about Trump?
Yeah, he
President?
talked about. He said he's all right. He said, "Yeah, Trump's all right." He said it's really not about Trump. Trump's not really doing this. Trump's a figurehead. He said even if Hillary Clinton did win, he gave me the prediction that Looking Glass gave him, and that was like it was like I don't know 96% that Trump would win and a 3% chance that Hillary Clinton would win, and then a 1% like variable, like maybe Jeb Bush Jr. would win or something, like a 1%. But he said even if Hillary Clinton does win, that it doesn't matter. Like none of this matters, and like even if they steal the election, it doesn't matter. It's just these guys are just losing their minds. This is a bunch of maniacs losing their minds because they know that the reckoning's coming, and they're doing everything in their power. They're letting prisoners go. They're setting fires. They're starting riots. They're paying all these people to do all this insane stuff because they're just trying to prolong the inevitable. Is what I took from what he said to me.
All right. So Daryl, let's leave it there. I know audience members, I know you want me to bring them on a little bit sooner than that, but we'll see. I've got a lot of guests lined up, so and there's only so much of these I could do. But and I still got a ton of notes here from our regression. And one of the terms that came up was Warden Shin. Oh gosh, my German's so horrible. Warden Shanaten Zion Letzer Ultimate Soldat, which I'm sure my German is absolutely horrific, but it stands for Become Zion's Last Ultimate Soldier. So that was showing up for you, Daryl. So, and by the way, it's actually I think it's a Belgium type dialect of German, not pure German. So, okay, I know maybe that doesn't mean trigger anything in you, but that's anyway. Okay, so without any further ado, thank you all audience members. Thank you all for listening in here. I did record some of your questions. Some yeah, look, we got some people asking about Biden this night. Okay, that's you're going to say that for another time. Let's see here. I put
Oh, deepfakes
contact
are going to be a thing too. He told me about that. He said Tom
what?
Cruise's brother, not Tom Cruise, Tom Hanks' brother is playing Tom Hanks. He said Tom Hanks has been dead for a long time, but he told me about deepfake technology, and I said, "What's that?" And that's when they can superimpose someone else's face and someone else. And I said they can do that. And it seemed scary to me at the time. He said they can do that now. And he told me about masks and stuff like that. Certain people would be wearing masks. Certain people would be wearing, mask technology advanced a lot. He said, and talked about all this stuff
All
about
right.
deep fakes with Tom Hanks, and his brother is actually playing him because his brother sounds just like him. I'm sorry, I don't keep you any longer.
No, it's all good. Yeah, I think we're audience members interested in that. So yeah, thank you again, Daryl. And so I'll be sure to put your contact info in the description area. Also, audience members, be sure to visit supersoldiertalk.com to click on some articles. We also recommend you go to the realrawnews.com to check out some of the latest, which I think might be accurate, but then again, there's no way to prove it. So, but yeah, if you want to look into what's going on here with some of the deep state members. Also, be sure to visit neologicaltech.com to support the work that I do. You get yourself a book. So yeah, my book is Lone Wolf. I go all into the secret space program and some of my own experiences. And then I'm trying to get some more of the Neo Cubes back in stock. So thank you all for supporting me while working on that. And yeah, so be sure to subscribe to the channel. Is there anything else? Any final words, Daryl?
Thanks for all the nice comments, and
Yeah.
I didn't really know what to expect because it was the first time I did it. Thanks for all the nice emails. Everybody's been very kind, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, then we'll see you all later. Bye, everybody.